Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Should we go? Yeah. All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10. Are you coughing? 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. I promise.
I wasn't prepared for that.
Brothers of the Serpent. This is a cube where we do science. We specialize here in trying it at home.
I thought you were supposed to say triangles.
I can't tell you how many times we have set this cube on fire.
Yeah.
At least once.
At least.
Very calmly, though. It was ablaze.
Yep.
And we have video of the whole thing. Maybe one day we'll release it. Well, maybe we don't have video anymore.
Yep. Completely emptied out my fire extinguisher and had to get a new one. So I went out and robbed the nearest boat that was parked in my property somewhere. Now I have a new one.
So, there's no news. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, there's zero things happening. I can't believe this, man. Like, Göbekli Tepe is sitting there and nothing's fucking happening with it.
Yeah.
There's fucking chambers under the Sphinx and nothing's happening there.
And Gudung Padang has chambers down in it. And
Nothing's happening there. As a matter of fact, the people that found those chambers are being poo-pooed on.
Yeah. That's
But
right.
probably not today, because nothing has happened this week.
No, yeah. Not even that has happened in the news.
They found entire cities in Mexico bigger than Manhattan and just nothing.
No further
Nothing
developments.
else. Yeah.
They found chambers in the pyramid. No further developments.
Yep. No further developments. Everybody's sitting at home with their minds blown.
Not a lot of weird shit happening right now, but well, there is some weird stuff, but it was not this week.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird shit happening next week, though.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. Is the weird?
Just-
is the weird forecast?
Just say it.
70% chance of weird shit next week, folks.
That's right. We're expecting great new discoveries next week.
So, I've been looking at the moon because you got to know
Because there's nothing else to do. But that's a great thing to look at.
Well, you got to know what the moon's doing,
Yeah. Yep.
and I found out that it's been doing the same shit for a really long time. But it's
Practicing Mr. Miyagi's fucking training shit. Wax on, wane off. Sooner or later, it'll start kicking all of our asses.
that's right. It'll go full moon on us. So, whenever I see people like talking about the moon online or whatever, if I have a chance, I'll say like, you know what, there's interesting things about the moon, and I've said this on the podcast before, but the diameter of the moon in miles is 2,160.
What?
Which is really interesting because that's of course the number of years in
A processional age.
That's right. And of course, that also makes the radius of the moon 1080.
Wait.
Right? 1080 plus 1080 is 2160.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the.
So wait a minute. The radius of the moon is 3 circles.
That's right.
It's the
The diameter is 6, of course.
6 circles.
Yeah. The diameter of the sun is 400 times exactly the diameter of the moon, which I should have that number in front of me, but I don't. It's 867,000, I think. Let me do this real quick. My calculator. I have a calculator. Let's see. 821.
I have a calculator.
I have one on my phone. 2160 times 400. 864. Okay, so I was close. 864,000 miles is the diameter of the sun. So the diameter of the moon, 2160. Diameter of the sun, 864,000. That's 400 times exactly Now, the distance between the Earth and the Sun is 93 million miles. The distance between the Earth and the Sun, or the Earth and the Moon, is, I can't remember this one either, 200 something. But anyway, the difference in the distance between the Sun and the Moon from the Earth is also 400.
Really?
Yeah. So
Is that why they're the same size?
that's right. The factor is 400 here.
So if I have something that's twice as large as another thing that I have,
And
then I put that larger thing twice as far away as the small thing, then they're going to look the same size.
They'll be the same apparent size to you, yeah.
That seems really absurdly simple. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if I have, wait. Let me because I was trying to think of like if I have the small thing in my hand and the large thing is somewhere far further away, and I put the small thing up in front of it and like move it towards me and away from me with my arm.
Yeah.
Once I get it to where they look the same size, I know that how far the thing that I have in my hand is from me is half the distance.
Right. But the thing that's far away that you're not touching is twice the distance.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so the distance from the Earth to the Moon is 232,500 miles.
So when I parachute into Egypt, I'm going to have a scale model of the Great Pyramid that I know exactly how small it is compared to the Great Pyramid. And when I'm hiking towards the Great Pyramid, I'll keep holding it up until it looks the same size, and I'll be like, I'm 400.
Yeah, whatever the ratio is. Yeah, I'm exactly 10 miles.
Then I have to bust out another one that's like a little bit bigger.
Or just make it get closer to you.
Yeah. I'm totally fucking doing that.
Yeah. So if you had a model of a pyramid and you knew exactly how big it was, then exactly how big it was, and as you were walking towards the Great Pyramid, you could hold it out and figure out exactly how far away you were by
multiplying.
Yeah.
Multiplying the size times the distance of the small model to my base.
That's right.
Fuck yeah.
So that incredible thing, again, the common factor is 400 between the sun and the moon. That's what makes them be the same apparent size in the sky, which also makes it so that we can, when we have a solar eclipse, the moon perfectly occults the sun, which allows us to see the corona, which is the solar atmosphere, which would not happen if the moon was a little bit bigger or a little smaller or a little closer or farther away. This wouldn't work. And there's no other orbiting moon body or whatever, moon object in the solar system that also has the same property from the apparent surface of its planet. Now, most of the moons obviously are on gas giants, but they're so small. So anyway, that's the first thing I tell people. Like, this is always fascinating to me that this precision relative to the surface of Earth is infinitesimally probable. It's improbable to the extreme. Like this does not seem like it can be an accident. But I found out recently that there's a whole lot of other. Now I've known about some other lunar anomalies before. Like the Blair cuspids are very strange. They were found by one of NASA's orbiting cameras. In the 60s probably. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, their pictures were taken of the lunar surface. So the camera, like Google Earth, you're looking straight down, and you can go. Now you can take Google Earth and make it Google Moon and look down at the moon. But the Blair cuspids are these artifacts or objects that were pictured on the moon's surface. They're little white, very small, narrow white objects. They look like they could be rocks or whatever, but the shadows they're casting are too long for them to be like boulders. They're more like towers. Okay.
Yeah, I remember you showing me those.
Yeah, they're called the Blair cuspids. So but when you look at the photograph initially, you're like, you don't get that. You see they have these short shadows coming off of them or whatever, and you're like, what's the big deal? But then you realize that it was almost high noon at, like lunar high noon, where the sun was almost going straight down on them, and they still have these like kind of long shadows for that, right? One of them is estimated at being 70 meters tall, which is way too for the narrowness of the object. It's basically like, it looks like the shadow that would be cast by something like the Washington Monument. If you're looking straight down at the Washington Monument, you see this little bitty square, but then it has this enormous shadow coming off it, right? That tells you like it is extremely tall and narrow. So there's no geological explanation for the Blair cuspids. And then the other thing that's interesting,
Can you see those on Google Moon?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can look them up. I think it'll take you right to them and tell you that they're not artificial. Yeah, you're gonna get a whole bunch of explanations that is completely, this is totally natural, and we all understand exactly what they are, but they don't. The other thing that's interesting about the Blair cuspids is there's a perfectly rectangular shape in the ground next to them, and this is the kind of thing like if you're looking at an archaeological site. You see like in Egypt, you can do this all over the place in the desert. You cruise through and you'll just see this faint square in the sand, right? And anybody who knows anything about Egypt is going to be like, there's a structure down there, or the foundation of it, or whatever. It's hidden underneath the sand. Yeah. You can still see the square. That's exactly what it looks like next to, like amongst.
On the moon, it's natural.
Right. Yeah. It's completely natural.
Because humans 100,000 years ago wouldn't have tried to leave Earth if there was a massive catastrophe coming.
Right.
And they definitely wouldn't go to the moon if they did leave Earth.
Like, what were they going to do? Flap their butt flaps and fly up there? Butt flappers.
Sir, we've just invented a new butt flap rocket.
I was thinking about the thing we were talking about. I think it was in episode 12.
It's got a lunar flapper.
We were talking about in episode 12. I think it was episode 12, where we were talking about how there's a tendency to
how you can hear light and see sound.
No, maybe it wasn't episode 12. That was episode 12.
Yeah, but we talked about a bunch of other shit.
Yeah. No, it was the one where we were talking about the maps.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, we talked about how there's a tendency to like, so if we see that some ancient people did something, we assume the most primitive way that they could have done it, right? Like the assumption of butt flap is basically what it is. Right. Like, what would be the most primitive way you could go to the moon?
Right. Giant catapults.
There was a Chinese guy, because the Chinese invented gunpowder and rockets, right? They're the ones that invented, like, but they used them for toys for the most part. They made fireworks and shit like that, and little spinners and shit like that out of the gunpowder. But they invented rockets by way of fireworks. So and there was a Chinese guy that actually fucking made a shitload of those and kind of strapped himself to them and had his assistants light them off, and there was a shitload of smoke and a loud noise, and he was never found.
Yeah, I believe that.
Disappeared. Probably he exploded, but
I tried something similar to that when I was a kid, but I didn't strap him to myself, but I did almost die. So I'm sure.
What did you do?
I just took a bunch of bottle rockets and just freaking
taped them together,
fuses, and taped them all together, and taped all their fuses together and lit it,
and then almost died.
Then almost died. Yeah. Because the fuses don't all burn the same.
Right.
It was like yeah, I've got.
Oh, so did it chase you around the room?
I've got 10 2 seconds. Ah!
Okay, so the Blair cuspids. There's also a tower and monolith. There's a bunch of other stuff on the moon. But I have this list because I recently found out that there are, when they brought back materials from the moon from the Apollo missions, they found what we would consider to be non-natural, like alloys, constructed metal materials, like brass. Uranium-236, which is not found naturally. It comes from like a breeder reactor. Another one is Neptunium. I don't know how to say it. Neptunium. Anyway, so yeah, so they found this this stuff abundant in the lunar dust, like in the Maria or whatever they call it. The other interesting thing is they found out that the rocks that are on the surface of the moon are made up of completely different stuff than the dust they're sitting on. So the dust on the moon is not like rocks turning into dust, right? But, you know, the basic idea, if you're on Earth, you see like sand, or you know, you see like like sand and silicates or whatever, and then you have these rocks around there. And the assumption is that the sand is a breakdown of the rocks, right?
Yeah.
Like in the desert. Well, on the moon, that's not the case. The rocks came from, or the dust came from somewhere else. They're completely different materials. So I have this list. So okay, and it's basically a list of mysterious things about the moon. Number one, the moon's age. The moon is far older than previously expected. Maybe even older than the Earth or the Sun.
And I've worked out Sumerian text.
The oldest age for the Earth is estimated to be 4.6 billion years. Moon rocks were dated at 5.3 billion years, and the dust upon which they were resting was at least another billion years older than that. Okay.
Neptunium.
There it is. Neptunium, chemical element with symbol MP.
It's a chemical element with symbol no problem. Atomic number 93.
And it's atomic number 93. Sun is 93 million miles away.
Huh.
A radioactive something, metal. What is that word? I can't see it.
Actinide?
Actinide. Actinide metal. Neptunium is the first transuranic element.
Transuranic?
I don't know. Transuranic. Does that have something to do with Uranus?
It was created artificially in nuclear experiments. Huh.
Yeah.
After uranium.
After uranium, okay. So uranium-236 is the same way. It's transuranic. Trans. Let's see. Okay, so the rock's
Did
origin.
they really name uranium after Uranus? Neptunium named for Neptune?
Yeah.
Okay. I did not know that.
So the origin of the rocks, the chemical composition of the dust upon which the rocks sat on the moon, differed remarkably from the rocks themselves, like I just said. Contrary to accepted theories, the dust resulted from weathering and breakup of the rock. What are they going to weather from?
Plutonium.
The rain on the
I just
moon?
like the way it sounds. Plutonium. How's your plutonium?
Good.
I never realized that they named these things after the planets. Okay. I'm really dumb. Jupiterium. Marsium.
Saturnium. Okay. Heavier elements on the surface. So normal planetary composition results in heavier elements in the core and lighter materials at the surface. Mercurium. Yeah. Mercury. Not so with the moon. Not so with the moon. According to Wilson, the abundance of refractory elements like titanium in the surface. So they found tons of titanium in the.
And that's after Titan. Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just learning. I'm just realizing now.
Can't even focus here,
All of
bro.
these. Yeah, I know. All of these freaking things are named after gods and planets. Planets are named after gods. That's all.
Yep. So the abundance of refractory elements like titanium in the surface area is so pronounced that several geologists proposed the refractory compounds were brought to the moon's surface in great quantity in some unknown way. They don't know how, but that it was done cannot be questioned. Okay.
Wow.
So number 4, water vapor. On March 7th, 1971, lunar instruments placed by the astronauts recorded a vapor cloud of water passing across the surface of the moon. The cloud lasted 14 hours and covered an area of about 100 square miles.
That
So
seems plausible. I mean, you know, it's been hit by comets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's what I was
Lots of
asking.
them.
When they were talking about the rocks weathering down into the dust, I'm like, what are they getting weathered by? What weather on the moon? Well, there's apparently clouds of water. So 5, magnetic rocks. The moon's rocks were magnetized. This is odd because there is no magnetic field on the moon itself. This could not have originated from a close encounter with Earth, because such an encounter would have ripped them apart. So why are the rocks magnetic? It doesn't have a magnetic field.
I know. So Earth gets impacted by, some metallic
Yeah.
asteroid. Massive.
Okay.
Extinction level event type
Yeah.
deal. It explodes, and pieces of the explosion go back out into space and land on the moon.
Yeah.
And so,
But they were saying that every fucking rock was magnetized, not just that they found some magnets. Like they're all magnetized.
well, isn't like everything like magnetic down on the atomic level anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
I mean, magnetism is the reason why we're not all falling through everything. I mean, it's sort of the
Yeah. So I mean, like, you're right about that. I think that whatever it was, they noticed some kind of magnetic property about it that is weird.
too macro to be.
Yeah, like it's weird given that there is no magnetic field of the moon. Like, it kind of implies what you said, that the rocks came from a magnetized body.
Yeah.
And since we already know that the dust on the moon is much older than the rocks themselves and is made of completely different shit, then the rocks being magnetized kind of makes sense if it's debris from Tiamat.
From basically what the Sumerians were saying.
Right.
Gotcha.
But they were totally wrong, and so was Sitchin.
Right.
I'm gonna make a website
.com.
called SumeriansWereWrong.com. Yeah.
Okay. Real quick.
Yeah.
Something I learned that, and this could be wrong because you can't really trust Joe Rogan, but no, I'm just kidding. But he actually was like, I'm not real clear on all this, but he was talking about Sitchin, saying, okay, what was it? Damn it. That the Sumerian texts were saying that the Anunnaki came here looking for gold to fix their atmosphere.
Yeah.
Well, that was before the science that showed that like you could actually use gold dust or something in an atmosphere to restore things like ozone and the protective layers that.
Yeah, that's right.
So he's like, I don't know. It's really interesting. Like he's deciphering or having, kind of making his own sort of translations to these texts.
Sitchin, not Joe Rogan.
Sitchin it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, yeah. He comes up with this idea that later was proven to be a viable way to fix an atmosphere.
Sitchin and Velikovsky were a lot alike in that respect. That they both were like basically putting out all this work that made these claims. Sitchin was doing it basically not making claims, but saying, here's what these translated texts say. And Velikovsky was saying, here's what all these myths appear to be saying, right? And they were heavily ridiculed, but over time they were found to be right again and again and again and again about
weird things.
Yeah, exactly.
But Velikovsky, kind of like Sitchin, they both sort of, they had other ideas or certain things in there that made it really easy for the academic community to just like shit all over them.
Yeah, to totally just
like John Anthony West said that there was some of the stuff he wrote about Egypt that was just so totally wrong.
Oh yeah, Sitchin wrote about Egypt.
Yeah. And so John Anthony West never even read his books because he was just like, well, he'd heard what other people were saying about Sitchin.
Yeah.
And then he also read some of the excerpts about Egypt, and he was just like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, and that's too bad.
That's
because
sad.
Yeah, because like they're both Velikovsky and Sitchin were pioneers in something, and like you can't expect them to get everything right.
And I think in the podcast I was listening to with Joe Rogan and
Carlson?
no,
John
Anthony West. Yeah, John Anthony West was kind of saying like, I should probably read his stuff. I just didn't.
They're really entertaining, Jade. John Anthony West. Too bad. You can hang out with Sitchin now, though. Okay, so magnetic rock. So 6, no volcanoes. Some of the moon's craters originated internally, yet there is no indication that the moon was ever hot enough to produce volcanic eruptions, except for all that lava on the surface. But that's what they're saying. So there are some craters that appear to be volcanic in origin, and then there's evidence of enormous lava flows, but there's no other evidence that the moon was ever hot enough internally to do that. That doesn't mean that it wasn't. They're just saying that they haven't found it. Right. Yeah. 7. Moon I'm not sure how to say this. Mascons or Mascons? Masons? It's Mascons. Sounds like like mascons to me. Mascons, which are large, dense, circular masses lying 20 to 40 miles beneath the centers of the moon's Maria. Okay, so you know that you look up on the moon, you see these dark patches.
Yeah.
Those are they're called seas or the Maria. So like there's the mare umbrium, you know, the mare. They're called mares or Maria.
Okay.
The dark patches are. In the very center of each dark patch, there's an enormous disc-shaped thing deep beneath it.
How do they know that? From like.
Let's see. It says, so, yeah, they're 40 miles across. Their circular masses are lying 20 to 40 miles beneath the centers of the moon's Maria. They are broad, disc-shaped objects that could possibly be some kind of artificial construction. Huge circular discs are not likely to be beneath each huge Maria, centered like bullseyes in the middle of each one by coincidence or accident.
How do they know that they're there if they're 40? How far down?
This doesn't say how they know.
How far down are they? 40?
20 to 40 miles.
40 miles down.
Yeah.
Buried?
Yeah.
40 miles down?
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's seismic.
Yeah, they must.
So,
hammering.
Yeah. 8. Seismic activity. Hundreds of moonquakes are recorded each year that cannot be attributed to meteor strikes. In November 1958, Soviet astronomer Nikolai A. Kozriev of the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory photographed a gaseous eruption of the moon near the crater Alphonsus. He also detected a reddish glow that lasted for about an hour. In 1963, astronomers at the Lowell Observatory also saw reddish glows on the crest of ridges in the Aristarchus region. These observations have proved to be precisely identical and periodical, repeating themselves as the moon moves closer to Earth. They are probably not natural phenomena. So we have the same thing, like you have all these quakes and then there's like weird earthquake lights. What's going on up here?
Okay. In astronomy and astrophysics, a mass concentration, or mascon,
is
a region of the planet's planet or moon's crust that contains a large positive gravitational anomaly. So Brett's saying that these disks cause a local increase in gravitational pull.
Oh, that's how they detect them, yeah.
Mass concentration.
Mascon.
Cool.
Mask on, mask off. 9. Hollow moon. The moon's mean density is 3.34, I think it's grams per centimeter per cubic centimeter, which is 3.34 times the equal volume of water, because water is like 1 per cubic centimeter, right? So the Earth's mean density is 5.5 grams per cubic centimeter. What does this mean? In 1962, NASA scientist Dr. Gordon MacDonald stated, if the astronomical data are reduced, it is found that the data require that the interior of the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere. Nobel chemist Dr. Harold Urey suggested that the moon's reduced density is because of large areas inside the moon where there is simply a cavity.
Hollow moon!
MIT's Dr. Sean C. Solomon wrote, well, he's Solomon, he knows everything. The lunar orbiter experiments vastly improved our knowledge of the moon's gravitational field, indicating the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow. In Carl Sagan's treatise, Intelligent Life in the Universe, which is a book that he wrote, the famous astronomer stated, a natural satellite cannot be a hollow object.
Yeah, either that or...
Keep your life to your own.
What is it? Damn it, I can't even think of the name of my own freaking hypothesis. The Elastic Universe hypothesis states that you cannot necessarily calculate the mass of an object based on
its gravity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the gravity is not directly connected.
Yeah. And I think they're measuring the mass by taking it here. You know what I mean? So like they bring pieces of the moon back and they're getting all these measurements of its weight so that you get grams per cubic centimeter.
But they also know the size of it and the distance it is from Earth and its speed.
Yeah.
Right? So you figure
Yeah. Yeah.
that they're using that to figure its mass too, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that they're using that to figure the mass.
The total mass.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right.
So it's like, in other words, they're saying it's too big for the density.
the
and
density
its gravity.
the density of it seems to imply like the density of the stuff that they've gotten, and then the density that they're seeing based on gravitational calculations from the Earth.
Right.
Okay, so it's two things. They're measuring density of everything they brought back.
Right.
And then they're looking at the density of the entire thing as a whole and saying that based on the density of the stuff we have and the density of the thing out there, it seems to be hollow because this stuff is too dense to make up for the mass of the, for the whole thing to be a single piece.
It would be too massy.
Right.
And thus the gravity would be greater.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Right.
So it can't be that massy.
Right.
So it's got to be hollow.
Yeah.
It's too big.
Right. And you're right. That is based on a calculation of what its total mass is from here, but also the mass of the stuff that they brought back. Yeah. Okay. But then they also have this part, Moon Echoes, number 10. On November 20th, 1969, the Apollo 12 crew jettisoned the lunar module ascent slip, causing it to crash onto the moon. And the lunar module's impact, about 40 miles from the Apollo 12 landing site, created an artificial moonquake with startling characteristics. The moon reverberated like a bell for more than an hour. This phenomenon was repeated with Apollo 13, intentionally commanding the third stage to impact the moon, with even more startling results. Seismic instruments recorded that the reverberations lasted for 3 hours and 20 minutes and traveled to a depth of 25 miles, leading to the conclusion that the moon has an unusually light or even no core.
Yeah, it's like a bell.
Yeah.
Like you hit a solid steel ball with a hammer and it doesn't. It's not gonna ring.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if you make it hollow, you'll hear
If it was really big, it would.
Yeah.
But a little solid steel ball is not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Not a good example.
But if you had an enormous moon-sized solid steel ball,
Yeah, it would ring for a long time. But that's
no,
that's a terrible example.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a hollow one, not solid steel. Like if you had a hollow steel ball that was like small, it probably wouldn't ring very much. But if it was bigger, so that you know what I mean? Is that not right?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking that I was just wrong about that period because it depends on how you suspend it.
Yeah.
And steel is crystalline and it's going to vibrate a long time.
Yeah.
Bad example.
I remember at the Franklin Institute, they had this thing where these heavy metal ball, probably steel, would drop out of a chute in the ceiling, and then they had all these plates that were tilted, and it would go ding, ding. They would bounce from plate to plate. And they didn't. I mean, they would They didn't ring. They would go bink.
It would probably ring more audibly, if it's hollow.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Stop turning off phone. Okay.
I shouldn't just mouth off about shit like that without really thinking about it first.
So number 11, unusual metals. The moon's crust is much harder than presumed. Remember the extreme difficulty the astronauts encountered when they tried to drill into the Maria? Does anybody remember that? Nope. Surprise! The Maria is composed primarily of ilmenite, a mineral containing large amounts of titanium, the same metal used to fabricate the hulls of deep-diving submarines and the skin of the SR-71 Blackbird. Uranium-236 and Neptunium-237, elements which are not found in nature on Earth, were discovered in lunar rocks, as were rust-proof iron particles. Pillar of Delhi, anyone?
Yeah, that's
So they're building the pillar out of moon iron.
moon iron. Moon ironium.
Lunar iron. Moon ironium.
Lunar ironium.
12. Moon's origin. Before the astronauts' moon rocks conclusively disproved the theory, the moon was believed to have originated when a chunk of Earth broke off eons ago. Who knows from
Out of
where?
the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. Another theory was that the moon was created from leftover space dust remaining after the Earth was created. Analysis of the composition of moon rocks disproved this theory also. Wait a minute, I thought the moon rocks were made of different shit from the dust. Another popular theory is that the moon was somehow captured by the Earth's gravitational attraction, but no evidence exists to support this theory. Isaac Asimov stated, "It is too big to have been captured by the Earth. The chances of such a capture having been affected and the moon then having taken up a nearly circular orbit around our Earth are too small to make such an eventuality credible."
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be elliptical if it captured it.
Right, and the moon has the most circular orbit of any body in the solar system. It's almost perfectly circular. It still is.
Which lends credence to
Right? I don't know, because according to the Sumerians, the moon is Kingu, which was ejected by Tiamat before their encounter with Nibiru. Remember, she was making all these generals.
Yeah, but it wasn't like thrown away. It was one of her moons.
Right. But she was making them in preparation for. Well, I guess you don't know what the time spans are.
Yeah, that's gonna be like fucking long time.
Yeah.
Right?
But if it was, because she ended up having 5 of them or something like that, all of which were destroyed except for Kingu in the battle with Nibiru.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if she has a moon and then she's like broken into bits, like that moon is already synced up with the planet.
Yeah.
Then it gets impacted, and it seems more likely that you could have such a circular orbit if like the impact causes both of these parts to be blown away.
Yeah.
In the same direction.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
Like one of them ends up way bigger than the other one, but they're both kind of moving towards the inner solar system.
Oh, you
at a
mean
relative?
You're saying that the moon is actually the remnants of Tiamat's other side. Is that what you mean?
No, I meant the moon is one of Tiamat's moons that was like pushed by the explosion of the impact with Nibiru.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that makes
so like it's completely like it's been just utterly destroyed on its surface by the debris and shit from Nibiru.
And if it was Tiamat's moon, it's also like the oldest moon in the solar system, which gives it a long time for its elliptical orbit to normalize into a circular one, right? So the older it is, the more circular the orbit will become.
Okay.
over
Well, I
time.
was thinking of that, and I don't know. Yeah, that I wasn't thinking. I was thinking that its whole orbit around Tiamat gets disturbed by the impact, but that this massive piece of Tiamat comes off, which is Earth. And they both are headed. They're both traveling sort of in the same direction towards the inner solar system, and so once they both end up getting captured by the sun.
Yeah.
So that their motion becomes relatively stable to each other.
Yeah.
in that
It is
process.
kind of hard to explain that if that's what happened, why it's the whole 400 distance from sun was the size. That's kind of because that still would.
It's just coincidence, man.
Can't cite coincidence because you don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. So yeah, we're actually going into that. 13, weird orbit. Our moon is the only moon in the solar system that has a stationary near perfect circular orbit. Stranger still, the moon's center of mass. This is weird. The moon's center of mass is about 6,000 feet closer to the Earth than its geometric center, which should cause wobbling, but the moon's bulge is on the far side, away from the Earth.
So it's kind of like a teardrop almost. Like
Yeah, there's a bulge on the far side, but its center of mass is on the side closer to us.
yeah,
That's weird.
but that kind of makes sense. Why it's that? Why we always see the same face, right? Because the center of mass that's closer to us is being held.
Yeah, because there's 2 points for the gravity to grab onto. That's what you mean. Like Randall Carlson does the thing with the example with the pin, where he puts a pin on the table, and then he holds it with one finger, and he's like, now try to spin it. And you can spin it real easily under his finger. But if he holds it with two, you can't fucking spin it, right? And so that's like, if there's two centers of mass or two centers of gravity on the moon, that's why it can be locked to where one side always faces us from the Earth's gravity, right?
Yeah. I was thinking more like an arrow flies, because there's like the heavier part is in the front and the lighter part is in the back.
Okay.
So like you grab the moon, you grab
This is
onto
coming
the
down
moon.
to arrowheads, is that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so ready to go digging. Anyway, don't have time. But yeah, so you latch onto the moon with the rope and you start swinging it around you, right?
Yeah.
And it's whatever the this doesn't make any sense. It's completely the opposite. The heavier part would go to the outside. But,
Right.
But because gravity is like, the force is going the other way, maybe the heavier side
Yeah, it's being
points
pulled
towards the
this way.
Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's being pulled
The-
this way. So it's
the
got a
lighter-
bulge. It's got a bulge on the far side, which is the lighter side, apparently. Right? But its center of mass is closer to us, which is the side that the gravity is pulling it towards. But its geometric center is in between those two things.
I was kind of like imagining that lighter side is like, the little kid on the edge of the merry-go-round that's like, freaking flying off back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been that guy before.
Yeah, and if you're standing in the middle of the merry-go-round, then he's always facing you.
Yeah, that's right.
He's hanging on for dear life.
And if you have a rope attached to whatever it is you're swinging around, it's always going to be facing the same side too.
That's true. Terrible example. This is just bad analogies. This is the Bad Analogies Brothers of the Serpent podcast. I'll keep coming up with these.
All right. Moon diameter, number 14. How does one explain the coincidence that the moon is just the right distance coupled with just the right diameter to completely cover the sun during an eclipse? This is what I brought up before. Again, Isaac Asimov responds, there is no astronomical reason why the moon and the sun should fit so well. It is the sheerest of coincidences, and only the Earth among all planets is so blessed in this fashion. Yep. We already kind of went over that one. So 15, spaceship moon. As outrageous as the moon as a spaceship theory is, all of the above items are resolved if one assumes that the moon is a gigantic extraterrestrial craft brought here eons ago by intelligent beings.
It's just covered in.
This is the only theory that is supported by all of the data, and there are no data to contradict this theory. Greek authors Aristotle and Plutarch, and Roman authors Aulus and Ovid all wrote of a group of people called the Proselynes, who lived in the central mountainous area of Greece called Arcadia. The Proselynes claimed a title to this area because their forebears were there, quote, before there was a moon in the heavens, unquote. This claim is substantiated by symbols on the wall of the courtyard of Calasaya near the city of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, which record that the moon came into orbit around the Earth between 11,500 and 13,000 years ago, long before recorded history, but right at the exact right time for the massive cataclysm of the beginning of the Ice Age.
Wait, what happened? I was thinking of a terrible analogy. And then what happened 12,000 years ago with the moon?
In the courtyard of Calasaya, which is in Tiwanaku, in Bolivia.
Oh, yeah.
It is recorded that the moon came into orbit around the Earth between 11,500 and 13,000 years ago.
That's fine.
Yeah. Number one.
So before that, no moon.
That's right. And that is a like you can find that in other places around the world. I don't have any before.
There should be a way to figure out if that's right. Because
but not if it's a spaceship.
No, but I mean, it is whether or not it's a spaceship. It still affects the tides, right?
Yeah.
And there should be some type of evidence, like ice core, whatever the fuck.
There were no tides previous to that.
Yeah, there's got to be some way to figure that out. Like, how long's the moon been here, dudes? Like, let's figure that out. Of course, they wouldn't even go looking for that because they're like,
right.
It's been here.
Well, they're like, well, it's older than the sun, so it's obviously been here a long time. You're like, yeah, but it wasn't here. I mean, it does seem strange, like.
It would be fucking crazy if it just showed up like 12,000 years ago. And maybe that's why everybody started building whack shit.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, think about if like we know humans were around for a long time before that. If we had some sort of an advanced civilization and the moon showed, like if it was just seafaring, then the moon shows up and starts causing tides, dude. Like that would just fuck everything up. Yeah. It's a flood. No, it's a tide. Then he goes back down and it comes back up. Oh, it's a flood again. Nope. Let's see. Okay, Age of Flashes. Aristarchus, Plato, Eratosthenes, there's a bunch of names here. Rabbi Levi, and Poseidon all reported anomalous lights on the moon. NASA.
Maybe that's. I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on that. Maybe that's why agriculture suddenly began like 12,000 years ago in Göbekli Tepe.
Because suddenly we had a way to make a calendar.
No, because like before, when the moon isn't like fucking up shit all the time.
Oh, okay.
Like there was just, it was like Garden of Eden, abundance all over the place. And then like it shows up and just like wipes out a bunch of shit because it's changing everything.
I got you.
Glaciers start breaking and shattering and doing all the kinds of shit, and everything becomes unstable. And so then it's like we have to save all these seeds from all these plants or whatever, and they're all going away, they're all dying, and we got to develop a way to like make them grow here.
That's interesting too, because that puts the Ice Age as being the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Like normally Ice Age, everybody assumes like, oh, the whole world sucks and everything, you know. But that's really interesting. Like the moon shows up and starts destroying shit, and then we have to go into agriculture because we can't just walk around and pick fruit off of trees anymore.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And then it's like the oceans were 400 feet lower and all this shit, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably a terrible one.
No, it makes me think of there's another theory that I can go through later. Okay, so
Trust me, guys. Usually I'm like way better at coming up with great theories. I come up with the greatest theories, and I've met a lot of people who have a lot of great theories, but
I love great theories. They're great.
my great theories are the greatest, usually.
NASA, 1 year before the first lunar landing, reported 570 plus lights and flashes were observed on the moon from 1540 to 1967. So they were doing research on lunar transient phenomena before they landed there. They're like, well, we should probably figure out what this stuff is before we land. And they found accounts of over 570 different transient phenomena on the moon. Let's see, Operation Moonblink. NASA's Operation Moonblink detected 28 lunar events in a relatively short period of time. It doesn't say how long. The Lunar Bridge. On July 29th, 1953, John J. O'Neill observed a 12-mile long bridge straddling the crater in the Crisium. In August, British astronomer Dr. H.P. Wilkins verified the presence of it, saying, "It looks artificial. It's almost incredible that such a thing could have been formed in the first instance, or if it was formed, it could have lasted during the ages in which the moon has been in existence." Like,
So it's still observable.
yeah, it's still there. It's,
Okay.
I mean, you can look for pictures.
Just the
of it.
way that was written, it was just like, briefly, he observed a bridge. I was like, what?
Oh yeah, on July 29th.
Yeah, it was just like,
He observed-
he's just watching the moon and this bridge is like,
It's transient. Yeah. Okay, the Shard. The Shard is an obelisk-shaped object that towers 1.5 miles from the Ukert area of the moon's surface, which was discovered by Orbiter 3 in 1968. Dr. Bruce Cornett, who studied the amazing photograph, stated no known natural process can explain such a structure.
light our moon. Come on.
Yeah. The tower, one of the most curious features ever photographed on the lunar surface by the Lunar Orbiter, photograph number 3 at number 384M, is an amazing spire that rises more than 5 miles from the Sinus Medi region of the lunar surface. Shit. It's okay. We're fine. All right. Time is relative. Yeah. The obelisk. The Lunar Orbiter 2 took several photographs in November 1966 that showed several obelisks, one of which was more than 150 feet tall. The spires were arranged in precisely the same way as the three Great Pyramids in Giza.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's a list of.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's why I was saying we're cool. We got to take a break here.
I was just like, fuck it, let's just make it a 2-segment show.
A 2-segment show.
We're almost at an hour here. We're at 47 minutes or something.
Well, you want to keep going? Just
Yeah.
forget the break?
Fuck those breaks. We don't have any sponsors.
Shh. Wait, they would know because they would hear them.
Brothers of the Serpent. Brought to you by Snake Bites. Yeah, that's badass shit.
So all of this stuff, there's structures on the surface that can't be explained by, that can't really be,
The official show observer is very excited about a 2-segment show. No breaks.
or a 2-segment segment, right? Not just a 2-segment show. Or you mean just like one break?
Yeah.
In between two?
Yeah, I was saying we'll just take one break. And
Ah,
just come
okay,
back
because I was like, wait a minute.
and we'll keep talking about the moon. I'm just kidding. Anyway.
But think about the idea that it's like, so if it's hollow, and the other thing, the one that wasn't mentioned in here that I always find fascinating is that there is a ratio between crater width and depth. There's a standard ratio. Like the width of the crater should, like you should be able to take that width and then figure out how deep it should be.
What's the crater width and depth ratio, Brett?
Outside?
I want to know.
But on the moon, there is no crater that's deeper than 3 miles, despite how wide they might be.
I wonder if that's because of the dust that came from somewhere else.
That filled it up.
Yeah. It's like the dust rolled in and just like kind of.
Well, you
made
can see the
everything-
central. You can see the central structures.
like the little peaks in the middle.
Yeah, and like if it was a big, deep crater filled up with dust, then the central structure would be hidden, at least on some of them. Like there are ones that are like they look weird because they're enormously far across, but they're so shallow relative to the width. They don't look like craters, but they are. They have the central structure of a crater, right? Whereas you look at Meteor Crater in Arizona, it's got this definite bowl shape. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, on the moon, there are no craters that are deeper than 3 miles. That's just, what is he saying here? Okay,
Okay,
depth to diameter
see-
ratios of 1 to 5 or 1 to 7.
large craters. Okay, those are small craters.
Yeah.
In large craters, however, gravity causes the initially steep crater walls to collapse downward. Okay.
Right, but that doesn't. The crater walls may collapse, but it'll still have this ratio. The depth is not changed by that. A little bit it will be because.
Well, what he's saying is that the walls collapse, so you can't see the true depth because it's a very large crater would have that initially have that ratio, but the walls would fall in because it's too much. So you can't.
Well, on the moon, you can still see the
I was
walls.
no wonder
Like that's what I'm saying. The walls are. I mean, like the moon.
I was getting that. That's
From-
like from Earth.
Yeah,
probably.
on Earth it's like that, but on the moon there's very little
Exile.
change over time with stuff except for from impacts. So it's strange when you have these enormous craters that are not deep at all, but you can still see the central. Because again, if the walls are collapsing and filling the crater in, you'll not see the central structure.
Yeah. So it's saying in simple craters that are relatively small, with a depth to diameter ratio of about 1 to 5 to 1 to 7 in a smooth bowl shape. In larger craters, however, gravity causes the initially steep crater walls to collapse downward and inward, forming a complex structure with a central peak or peak ring in a shallower depth compared to diameter 1 to 10 to 1 to 20. The diameter at which craters become complex depends on the surface gravity of the planets.
Okay, well, there are craters on the moon the ratio is much smaller than 1 to 10 to 1 to 20. I mean, I've seen ones where it's a huge circle, but it looks like, think of a circle that's a foot across, just from perspective, and then the depth is going to be half an inch.
Yeah.
That's too shallow.
That's 1 to 20.
That's too small. But so all of the other thing about it is that they're all the 3 mile depth is a marker. In other words, like you have craters that have the right ratio of diameter to depth until you get to where they should be more than 3 miles, and they're all 3 miles after that.
Right. I gotcha.
Which basically implies that there's a shell of incredibly dense or incredibly strong material.
Titanium.
3 miles. It's not strong enough to survive impacts. Like we're talking, impacts of things that would make these enormous craters. Like, there are huge craters on the moon, and it doesn't make any sense unless there's a shell, which would be a hull. Because it's going to be made of some material that we don't know of. There's nothing we know of that would survive impacts that would make these enormous craters. That can survive it. There's so much.
I was saying titanium just because they refine it.
Right.
Titanium.
Yeah. What I'm pointing out is that there is no known material, alloy or element that we know of that can survive the energy output of an impact of these sizes. That's probably what it would be called if you had to find it. Lunarium.
I don't know.
Moonium.
Moonium sounds better. No, really, Lunarium is probably.
What is he saying here? Because of isostasy? No. Substrate layering. Or curvature of the moon. Radius diameter differences for Mare versus Terra craters are either absent or are equivocal. The ratio of apparent diameter to impressed diameter averages 0.83 for some smaller craters. Yeah, the smaller ones don't matter in this particular. Let's see, lunar craters have widely varying ratios regardless of size. They never get deeper than 3,400 meters. That's weird. 3 miles. Yeah, so the ratio is thrown off by anyone that should be deeper than 3,400 meters or 3 miles. Which again, I'm saying, implies that there is a shell around the moon of incredibly strong, like something so strong that we have no idea what it is. Like there's no known material that can survive impacts of extremely large objects coming in at 30,000 miles an hour. It just doesn't appear to be damaged by, because there's places where they're overlapping. You've got a big circle, and then there's another big circle on top of that one, and then another big circle on top of that, and none of them go deeper than 3 miles. So it's been hit 3 times in that same spot, and it's fine.
The moon is hardcore.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever been hit 3 times in the same spot, but you're not fine after it happens.
The moon's been totally fucked many times in the same spot.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
yeah. And it's pretty scary to look at the craters on the moon and realize that because the Earth's gravity is a lot stronger, that it's going to hit way more than that.
Yeah.
Unless the moon is like a really old spaceship, which would explain all those craters.
It's just hauling ass through space
Right.
with a nail. It's like, we need to build this massive spaceship out of shit that just doesn't care.
That's right.
Doesn't carry them.
Yeah. Does not give a fuck you. So I think that there was a whole book written by a couple of engineers called, I can't remember what, the basic premise of the book is that the moon is a spaceship, and he gives all this information plus a lot more, on on the moon being all the evidence points to it being an enormous artifact. Like I wouldn't say
Sounds
shit.
like a David Bowie song. The moon is a spaceship.
Yeah. Major Tom.
The moon is a spaceship, Major Tom. I've hit you 3 times in the same spot and you still don't give a fuck. If he didn't write it, he should have.
You heard it here first, folks. The David Bowie Moon is a spaceship song. Hello. With the did not give a fuck him as the whole material.
Traveling across the cosmos
In the moon. But I think it's fascinating. Like,
Only a fucking lunatic would do that.
this is fucking lunacy.
Farewell.
And maybe that's why it drives us crazy. You know, when it's full, we go nuts because we know it's a fucking ship. We've spent all this time looking for aliens and evidence of aliens, and there it is. Every fucking night. It's up there in the sky going, I'm the ship, you stupid fuckers.
Yeah, so seriously, we need to go build a base on that ship.
That's right. They're wondering, like, is there water here? Yeah, it's full of water. It's a spaceship. Probably used it for fuel.
Gary, the humans are building a fucking lunar something on our spaceship again. Get out there and wipe them off.
Wipe them off. Turn on the moonship wipers. Well, the other
Dang it, they're building a base on our ship.
But if you build a ship, you know, and I was gonna say, you have to say in this context, that's no moon. From Star Wars, of course. You know, they seem to be around that moon right there. That's no moon.
It's the Death Moon.
Right. So everybody ridicules this moon as a spaceship idea by comparing it to the Death Star. But no, everyone knows that the Death Star is out there around Saturn. If you look out there,
Maybe it was our spaceship.
it could have
You
been
know?
our space. That's like
We
that
just
could be
forgot
how we got here.
Yeah. We came here. We are the Anunnaki.
The moon is the Garden of Eden.
Okay. Threw a wrench in my spoke. But anyway, yeah, we like come down here. We're out of gas. We're like, we need gas. And we come down here.
And then a cataclysm happens right after.
Yeah, and we're like, fuck. We brought the only module down here. Got destroyed.
Shit.
So we're like stuck here for
Yeah, because
thousands of years.
Became dumb. Everybody got wiped out by the cataclysm except for like the ensign.
Some of us mated with some other strange creatures that were here.
So the civilizer gods were coming from the moon. They were the ones that stayed up there. And we're like, shit, they're all fucking stupid now. They came flying down here to try to civilize us again, and then they left. Promised to return. Went back into cryosleep to hope that we would become civilized again eventually. And then we could come back to the moon and leave because we weren't going to stay here.
Yeah, that would suck if the moon just tore off one day. We're like, oh! Oh no!
Yeah, like the other thing about it being a spaceship, like the type of orbit that it has, and the fact that it's so perfectly aligned with the sun makes it seem like it was a calculated orbit, right?
Yeah. Maybe it has like a variable density.
The only option
You know, if the standard model is right.
Oh, okay.
So they that's how they travel. It's like they change the density. Like you make the density like really low, and then you accelerate.
Flick it, yeah.
And then you make the density extremely high so that it has tons of inertia, and it just never fucking slows down, and it just rams through everything.
That makes
It's like
sense.
when you get close to a star system, you just increase the density so much that your freaking slingshot is like insane.
Yeah,
And then it comes near Earth, and then it like decreases it to get that perfect.
the perfect orbit.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
and then maybe the sun was, you know, they're like, let's just block out that sun. It's like insane. We'll go down there, you know. So they make a lunar eclipse,
Yeah.
right? And they come down here and they do shit during the day.
Yeah, it is hard to explain that part of it. Like, even if it was a spaceship and they came here and made a perfect orbit around Earth, how did the 400 ratio with the sun and the distance and everything, like, what, like, why would you even do that? You know, like, the idea of that is, like, if I was coming in to go and do an orbit around a planet, I wouldn't care if my spaceship perfectly occulted the sun of that
They
planet.
were so OCD, dude. Like the pilot was like, "Nope, just hold on, one more minute. It's fine, dude."
The other thing is that the moon is the only moon object in the solar system that does not orbit perfectly around the equator of the body that it's orbiting around.
Yeah, it's tilted. Like,
Yeah, like 5 degrees, something like that. 6 degrees.
Yeah.
7. Yeah. So that's also strange and applies some kind of artificiality or something drastic in the past, like Tiamat exploding.
That's really
Tiamat's equator was in a different place than the Earth's is now. So, I think that was a good hour-long segment.
Yeah.
Of moon mysteries. So now the next time you look up at the moon, you're just like, it's a fucking spaceship. You can know that that's how we're gonna get to the galaxy. Just gotta get up there. And we don't need to build a base. Just go inside.
Thank you for listening to Brothers and Serpent. Brought to you by Moonships.
Moonships Incorporated.
Get your own moonship.
We do not give a fuck you.
Only $10 million every hour for the next 2 billion years. Moonships.com.
I bet there's snakes in there.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. High atop the dusty bones of the Edwards Plateau.
Stone bones.
Snakes in the dirt.
Stones. Snakes in the bones.
Snakes in the bone stones.
We need to build this tangicube out of do not give a fuck him.
Yeah. So when you were talking about those the measurements and stuff in the moon there, I mean, it made me think of this stuff. I was listening to been listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, great podcast.
Yep.
Going through favorite guests and listening to Randall Carlson stuff, and he was talking about some sacred geometry. And there's just all like, I went to Italy recently with my boss's family, and this guy Felix, who's the husband of Dan's, my boss's daughter.
Yeah.
And he's from Germany, and like the whole time he's giving me shit that we use the imperial system, right? He's like, you need to switch to the metric system. It's way better. This is way better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
He's badass.
I see that on Reddit all the time.
So he's like, every time, like when we go to the store, we buy beer. He's like, you see, if you drink one of these, and it's like this and that. And he's like, he's
Yeah.
using everything to like tell me how much like easier it is to figure out.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
When we're driving somewhere, he's like,
exactly
"See?"
30 liters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, but this old one is like cool because it's got like weird like connections to precession and the earth and man, bro. But I couldn't remember any of them. But Randall Carlson's really good with just like rattling off all this shit.
Yeah, and like before you do that, we were talking about this before we started the show, right? And you had a great point about keeping the old one around.
Yeah. Okay. So the old one is one of the things that Randall said that I thought was a great way to say it easily, quickly, simply. That there are two fundamental things about the old system, the imperial system.
Yeah, two fundamental baselines.
Baselines, right? One of them is man, the measuring stick. Man is the measuring stick of the universe, right? We carry it with us everywhere. Mm-hmm. And the other one is the earth. So if there's some in every different type of measurement or every connection between these measurements, there is either the connection to man or the connection to the earth. So that made me think that, like, okay, all of these things that Felix was bringing up about the metric system were really badass. Like he was right. Like
basically,
it's so easy.
10. Yeah,
it's so easy to use and figure all this stuff out. But anyway, I was thinking that now that we have this high technology society, the metric system is great, but we need to also keep this old system. So you really want both, because if in preparation for, say, some cataclysm or some disaster or something where everything just that the preppers are getting ready for it. If that happens, you need the old system. You need to know it, because you're not. How do you figure out what a meter is?
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to figure out what a foot is.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if it's like perfect or exact. It's a way to measure things. Your pace is a way to measure how far you've gone.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a freaking thing that's going to tell you, oh, well, we've gone so many kilometers, like.
Right.
But
well,
you can figure out how many paces you've gone, and therefore you can say, well, I've gone about a mile.
Yeah. You can figure out a foot if you go to the equator of the Earth and run all the way around it, figure out how long that is. And then you divide that by the number of degrees in a circle times 1,000, 360,000. And then you divide that number by the exact number of days in the mean tropical year, which is 365.24 or something.
Yeah, you could do that.
But what I'm saying is, like, I think that's part of your point. Like, that takes the Earth, right, as the baseline for that. It's the equator of the Earth. But then it takes the circle. And that's because, again, you think of the circle as being an analogy to the Earth's orbit around the sun, because it's 360 days, 365, right, 360 degrees in a circle with 5 extra days, basically. That's the way the ancients looked at it. They would have a 360-day calendar, and then they would have 5 festival days that were just not part of the calendar. Nobody did business, and they just partied for these 5 days that weren't real, right? And they use that, like you say, the sexagesimal system, the base 60, base 12.
Yeah.
Right. So the foot is based on all of that. It's based on the Earth, and then the Earth's orbit around the sun, or the number of degrees in a circle, and both of those, actually, because the orbit around the sun is the mean tropical year, 365.24 or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you do all that, you take the equator and you divide it by the number of degrees in a circle times 1,000, and then again by the number of days in the mean tropical year, you get the foot. That's exactly where it comes from.
Yeah, that's badass.
Yeah.
So another one that Randall was talking about is and this is one we don't really use anymore. It's the only place you can find it really being used is in horse racing. It's the furlong.
Oh yeah, the furlong. Yeah.
Okay, which is 1/8 of a mile.
It's like a fathom.
Yeah.
I guess they use that in depth of water. It's fathoms deep.
Yeah, fathoms.
Yeah.
So he was talking about the furlong, and then it's 1/8 of a mile, and it's like, well, what is a mile? We know a mile is 5,280 feet. Well, that's kind of weird, but mile, the root word there is mil.
Yeah.
Which is the Greek word for 1,000.
Right.
Because a mile is actually 1,000 paces.
Right.
And a pace is like basically 2 steps. So if you're gonna count the paces you took. You would count every time your right foot hit the ground or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, a pace is a roughly like the average pace is like 5.2 feet or 5.
Yeah.
You know,
close to 6 feet, something like that. Yeah. 5 to 6 feet.
which is like 100th or one. So 5.28
Yeah.
feet, 5,280.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's cool.
but if you go 1,000 paces, you've basically gone a mile.
Yeah.
Right?
Roughly. Yeah.
Like 1,000.
Unless you're a
mile.
real short person.
Right. So
or you're a giant.
right. So there's this thing. Okay. So the furlong is 1/8 of a mile, which is 660 feet. Right. Now an inch is basically the width of your thumb at the knuckle.
Yeah, the big knuckle.
Or it's also like the length from the tip of your thumb to the center of the knuckle.
Yeah.
That's basically an inch. So those things are related together. But if you multiply the furlong times 12 inches, right? Think of how many inches are in each foot. So 660 times 12, you get a number which represents the diameter of the Earth. Whoa. In miles, which is 7,920.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Right. So the inch is to the furlong as wait, what is it? Yeah, 1/12 of
Yeah.
the diameter of the Earth or whatever.
Okay,
right?
so the furlong is to the Earth. Wait.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the inch is the mile.
Okay.
The furlong is the diameter of the Earth.
I got you. So the inches to the furlong is to the Earth, diameter of the Earth. That's badass.
Is that right?
Is that what you're saying?
The inch is to the furlong as the
Furlong is to the diameter of the Earth.
miles. No, that's what I'm saying. Like
Oh.
what am I trying to say? There's the same number of inches in a furlong as there are miles in the diameter of the Earth.
Oh, okay. I got you.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
But like the weird. So you think, okay, but a furlong is 660 feet, which is strange, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't know these connections, it's like, well, what good does that do me?
Right.
But because the mile is 1,000 paces, and 1/8 of that is the furlong,
Yeah.
and then the point is that these ratios exist, and they're using man and the Earth. So it's like you could actually create something like the Great Pyramid, and get really close to an actual scale model of some, geometric thing, some Earth-related thing, using your body.
Yeah, and that also points out that there are all kinds of parts of our body that are correlated to the Earth in terms of size and ratio.
Right. So you go, I don't know, however many paces a furlong is, but 1/8 of 1,000. So somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but
I don't know.
well, let's just figure it out.
1,000 divided by 8. It's like 120.
125.
Okay,
So 125 paces is a furlong, basically.
that's cool.
And then so that's just cool shit. And there's like Randall Carlson can go on and on about these different.
And the other way that it
connections.
starts to tie in also is with time. Like there's this weird thing where because time is also measured, we got 12 and 60.
Right.
That like numbers of things equal the numbers of things, and like the
Yeah, it's the whole system. It's kind of dumb to like move from the imperial system to the metric system while keeping time in the imperial way, because
yeah
that's fucking fuck shit up.
I've told people that before. I'm like, well, that your clocks are all based on the imperial
Right.
system.
The whole system is a way to measure space and time.
Yeah.
It's all together.
Yeah, and there's weird correlations with like the number of I don't know any of them offhand. I was just listening to this thing that was talking about some of them though, but it's like the number of minutes in a day correlates to like some particular length of thing. Like it goes back.
Yeah,
and forth.
the number of minutes in a day is 1440.
Yeah.
1,440. And
Right.
That is half of a processional age, isn't it?
Half of
No.
the processional age is 1080.
That's right. What is it then?
1080 plus 360 is 1440. right?
Yeah, 1440 is 2 times 720, so, right?
Yeah.
There's this weird shit, like with geometry and time. And
Yeah, and I think the sun's diameter, that what I was talking about before, it's like 860 something, or 824,000 or whatever. 824,000 miles is the number of seconds in a day.
What is it?
Like the diameter of the sun in miles is like the same as the number of seconds in a day.
Yeah.
824,000 or whatever. Like,
Oh, yeah. Okay, 1440 is 1080 plus 360.
yeah.
This is just weird. I love it that it's like whoever originally came up with this whole system was genius to connect them all in that way. Okay, so
Or that's what I'm saying. Like, are they connected already? Like,
well, they obviously are
Yeah.
because we're on a ball, right? That's spinning.
no, it's flat.
So if you, but see, it was arbitrary to decide how many degrees to put in a circle.
except for the number of days in a year. Like that was.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Except, well, it's not exactly, but you picked something close, right? And they pick a number that's easily divisible in so many different ways, evenly.
Yeah, I think I get the idea that they viewed it because of what they did with their calendars, that they have a 360-day calendar and then these 5, and some cultures did the whole Bacchanal, the 5-day festival. Other people just didn't do anything on those days, like they were not real.
Yeah.
I get the idea that they viewed those 5 days as an imperfection.
Yeah, right. But
I'm not
when
trying
you're
to
talking about math. Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking like when you're talking about mathematical, like what's easy to divide things into.
Yeah.
365 or 360. It's easier to go with 360. There's way more whole numbers that are
right. Basic,
divisible.
yeah.
That it's divisible by. So
Yeah.
but still the choosing of like these, the 12 and 60. It's like those things are like you divide an hour into 60 pieces and then divide each one of those into 60 pieces each, and then when you're measuring, and that's for
Then
time.
you divide the day in half and then give each half 12.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so that the night all has 12 and the day has 12.
Right.
So
So that also matches with the year because of the lunar cycle, which has nearly 12 orbits every year, which
Yeah.
gives us the months. Right?
Yeah, but the moon is a spaceship. But then when they go to actually measuring the surface of the planet, then they're like, well, let's we'll go ahead and divide. We'll create this idea called degrees. Let's put 360 of them in there, and then we'll divide each one of those up into 60 pieces, and then divide each one of those pieces up into 60 pieces.
Yeah.
So we're doing the same thing that we do with time, with space.
Yeah. Well, how does Randall put it? He's like, you take 360 and you divide those each into 60 minute parts.
Yeah, minute parts.
Minute minute. And then you divide those minute parts into 60 parts a second time, and you get seconds.
Right. And it's both with space and time.
Yeah.
They're doing both. And so, like, using the old system of spatial measurement, you're like when you look at these temples and things that were built or whatever, they're lined up, and astronomical alignments. They have proportions that are relative to proportions of the Earth and man and all of this shit. And it's like it's obvious they were correlating the two, time and space, together when they built shit.
Yeah.
But you can't do that with the metric system.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Or if you so
what is metric time? We don't have one.
that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
like, if you were to try to do that with the metric system, it's like, all these enlightened fellows that are just like, oh, it's way better, 10, 10,000.
10, 100. Yeah, it's base 10. Okay,
Real
great.
easy. Okay, now
Measuring for dummies.
Yeah. So when they start to build something, they have to use geometry, and they go back to 360. And
That's right. You're trying to build a circle in metric.
so it's if you're gonna measure the Earth, better to do it using the number systems that work with time, since we're moving around in space, and time has everything to do with what the fuck's going on here.
Yeah.
You have to have a clock in order to measure the surface of the planet,
Yeah.
unless you have a satellite.
I've thought about this. Maybe this is a dumb question, but like, the first time you're measuring the if you like the fact that so many of our measurements are based on some circumference of the Earth. How do you get that measurement initially? Like, do you like pull a string all the way around the whole planet? I mean, like, how do you do it when you don't have it?
Randall Carlson described this method of doing it, where, and I can't remember what it was. It was something about they put a rod in the ground.
Okay, yeah.
And they
They
measure the ratio of the shadow. Then that gives you the distance, the ratio of the distance from the height of the rod that you put to the sun. So then you have this idea of that distance, and then you can get the distance to some other body in space, and
Well,
then you
first-
can triangulate and figure out how big the Earth is.
Yeah, I think doesn't it start like he shows the whole progression. You start out learning how far away you are from the equator or something like that, and then you because of the way the shadow is.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but
Yeah,
it's
but there's a long progression where you end up being able to calculate distance to stars and shit like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's all from just you don't have to go very far to do it. You can move short distances and triangulate, and then you can figure out from that basically the size of
But
the
you
Earth.
have to have metrology already. This is my point. Like, since our measuring system is based on the circumference of the Earth, how do we get that circumference before we had that system?
See, I don't think that's what I'm saying. Is that it seems that whoever created this system knew those things. Like so you don't have to have you can choose a measuring system if you know the ratios, right?
I don't know.
If you have the ratio of the difference, like if let's say I walk so many paces, I put a staff in the ground, I measure the shadow and everything. Then I walk so many paces north.
Measure the shadow with what?
Measure the ratio of, like, draw a line, like you. So what they would do is they put a staff in the ground, and then as the shadow was going along, they draw it. They draw the tip of the rod's shadow in the dirt around it. Right, and it ends up with this little weird spiral thing.
Yeah.
And so you can measure the ratios, or the ratio that's built into the spiral, right? And then and I'm not saying necessarily using units, right?
Okay. That's what I mean. How do you measure something if you don't have a unit to use? I'm not really sure. Like, you have to basically be able to carry it with you, right? Maybe that's why they used man.
Right.
The measuring stick.
You can use like, it would be like
Four
saying,
arms.
well, I'm going to put a piece of string on the spiral and then cut it.
Yeah.
Like, there it is, one.
Right. One.
That's your unit.
That's
one
right.
string.
One cut string.
So then you move so many paces north, and that's your measurement stick. And the paces that you walked north, and then you put another staff over there, and then you do the same thing with the shadow. Then you have a different size string.
Yeah.
Then you start to do math, and you figure out, basically you triangulate.
One string divided by string one divided by string two gives you the ratio.
Somehow, yeah. I don't remember how it's done, and I wish I would have looked into this more. I didn't know we were going to get into this detail, but
I remember the same thing too. I've just always wondered, how do you do it without units? Like, who did it first? They probably were using some other kind of units.
Yeah, my point is that it seems like the system was designed after they knew these ratios and these
Yes.
relative
Yeah.
sizes, right? And then they're like, okay, well, let's come up with a system that's based on the object that we're measuring.
Yeah.
Now that we know basically and if you start out with man, and man is the measuring stick, like this is the ancient.
So Inky is carrying around a Dappa. And he's
You're
like,
right.
"Here, lay down."
This is what sacred geometry is all about. Like the idea that man is the measuring stick of the universe, and that's one of the things, like the Masonic.
That was one of our jobs when we were the Adamu.
Yeah, that's one of the Masonic traditions that they've passed on. Is like that idea. In geometry and all the ancient builders and all, it was based on that kind of shit. So
I can totally see it. Like, the pace is because, like Inky in the Sumerian tradition, Inky was the Anunnaki who did all the measuring. Like, he was the one that freaking surveyed everything, right? So he's got a Dappa running around with him. He's like, okay, run over to that thing over there and tell me how many steps it takes you. Inky's not gonna do all that walking. So of course the pace becomes based on a Dappa's step, and he's a man, right? How long is that thing? Go over there and figure out how long that is compared to your arm.
yeah.
Inky just sits there, makes the Dappa do all the running around, and that's what the pace is part of the base measurement.
Yeah. And that goes back. I think we mentioned this before too. This idea that man is like in the middle of the scale of the universe,
Between the micro and the macro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's this very ancient idea that we are the measuring stick, right? Now that's sort of
Or the mean, just the mean measurement. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Like, isn't
It's
the
kind of-
mean is the thing in between the extremes,
Okay.
right? Like a mean distribution or whatever.
don't be mean.
Don't be mean, man.
That's a great meme.
That's why man is mean. That's a great meme. Don't be mean, man. Have you seen the Don't be mean, man meme? Oh, man, this made me think of something. Oh, yeah, Naptoplaya.
Yeah, Brett's bringing up real quick the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci.
Yeah.
Is listing all the ratios and body parts to total height in each other. Yes.
Yeah, showing that they're all based on feet. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. In Egypt, way out in the desert, way out in a place that's not it was not inhabited by any of the
You mean
dynastic.
like Egypt?
Yes, far from the Nile, in a place that was not inhabited that we know of, and nowhere near there was inhabited that we know of by any of the dynastic Egyptians in any point in history of the ancient Egypt history. Okay, so it's out in the middle of nowhere in Egypt, in the desert. There's a place called Naptoplaya. It's also called the Calendar of Adam.
Yeah.
Has been referred to as the Calendar of Adam. It's a bunch of standing stones.
Yeah, it's like a big freaking
Yeah.
standing stone.
But it's incredibly ancient. They've calculated that it's 7,000 to 9,000 BC. Now the standing stones aren't impressive or anything. They're not humongous, right? It really, what it looks when you see it, it looks like a bunch of. I mean, they're rocks that you can carry. You can pick one up by yourself. They're maybe a foot or 2 feet tall, or whatever. They kind of just stick up out of the sand. But they're all like, people started to look at it like, what is this? Because it was clearly somebody made it, but they're so old and it's been sitting out there for forever. They started to figure out that somebody was working out a calendar. Like,
yeah, I remember them showing like the lining them up was like marking the heliacal rising of like various different stars.
But the most fascinating thing to me about the calendar of Adam is that so there's a central area where there's, like Stonehenge or whatever. They're kind of all around the center, but there are these outliers that are kind of way out there. And those turn out, like, the distance from certain ones in this sort of central area to those turn out to be exact. Like they exactly measure the distance relatively to different stars. Like this one, from here to here is like relative to the distance from here to here to different stars and shit. Like, in other words, you can use this to calculate how far away certain stars are in the sky, like Sirius, and that like that. So you're thinking like 9,000 BC, somebody's out there standing up rocks, and it probably wasn't a desert pit. It was savanna, or 'cause this would be the period where the Sphinx was being weathered by all the rainfall, right? 9,000 BC. So it was probably not desert at that point. It was getting hit by monsoons, and it was probably a lush place. And so this dude's camping out there, figuring out how far stars are away from the Earth, and standing up rocks to represent it. And they're still there in the desert. The calendar of Adam.
Yeah.
Like that,
It seems clear that our ancestors were just totally obsessed with the sky. And what's going on up there.
yeah.
And the question is why? Why were they? And they built all this shit on the ground, the as above, so below thing. Like, why? We don't do that.
Yeah, sadly.
Very rarely are there modern structures that are like, oh, well, we're gonna make this,
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, we're building the tallest building in the world now.
Yeah, great.
Great, nice.
Like that one in Dubai that they had to let twist. You know about that? Dad talked about that because Dad built lots of skyscrapers. So like, when you're building enormous skyscrapers, ones that are like 100 stories above, they have this tendency to want to turn. The four corners kind of want to twist.
Did not know that.
And he says that, like, he was telling me that, like, when the people are building skyscrapers, they're obviously fighting this. So like, as the building gets taller and taller, you're fighting more and more to keep the four corners like straight.
True, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this one in Dubai that they built, it's like it is now the tallest building in the world. It's enormous. They just had to let it go. They just had to let it turn. Couldn't find it anymore. So the building's
really
like
weird.
Now, it's not something that you can really see visually, but it does definitely turn, right?
I wonder if it would be stronger if they like let it. If
Well, I think that's why they had to do it.
Into.
They had to let it happen so that because if they kept fighting it, it was going to weaken the structure. Because you're going to put all this tension in there and everything. You know? And then there's the what is this suspension bridge where they had to calculate the curve of the Earth for the two towers, because every suspension bridge has two support towers in the middle, and they were the bridge is so long that the towers were so far apart that they had to calculate for the curve of the Earth between the two towers because they're not actually parallel with each other. Flat earthers take that one.
Oh, the debate is over.
That's right. This bridge would not work if the Earth wasn't round. Proof: water won't stick to a spinning ball. God.
All right, we're at the 30-minute mark. Should we take a break, or should we just keep going?
Hard choice. Snakes. Let's just
That's what I would have said if we took a break.
Let's just take the break.
All right.
So we're gonna take a break.
We're gonna take the snake.
Take the snake. Welcome back to Brothers of the Serpent podcast segment.
It's my turn.
3. Normally would be Kyle's turn, but I'm doing it because it's actually the 3rd segment.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Snake Bros! Guaranteed 30% brain expansion.
Angels and demons, and monsters and serpents, and subscribe cards.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good. So I want to talk about appearing people. Yeah, you know, people disappear. Well, sometimes people appear.
Like 6 billion of them.
Yeah, we gotta do something about that. It needs to be 500 million. No, I'm not talking about being born.
Okay.
Fully grown people disappear, just like people disappear sometimes. Like that guy in the news a couple of weeks ago.
They just found the tap out of the shadows, man.
Yeah, they just appeared. Yeah, so in the news, it was like 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, from New York State. This guy was at a ski resort there. He's a firefighter. For some reason, I find that interesting because there's missing 411 firefighters too that vanished. Like the guy that ran off chasing his dog and disappeared. Remember that? Yeah. Well, this is a firefighter, and he was skiing in New York State, probably upstate somewhere, and he just disappears. No one can find him, and his family's freaking out. All of his stuff is still there, right? And it was like the middle of the day. He just suddenly just wasn't around, and like, but all of his gear, all of his belongings, and everything were still in the lodge, including his wallet, and, you know. But he was gone, and they searched for him. Like, there's this humongous search for 6 days, and he turns up in California. Like, has no idea how he got there. Doesn't really have a memory of anything. That he just, and he's still wearing the ski clothes that he was wearing on the day he disappeared. Like all the gear, he's still wearing all of it, and he's in California.
You went down the wrong slope, buddy.
Now, of course, if you read the news stories about it or whatever, they're basically, since there's no answers, they're theorizing that he got hit on the head, and then some trucker picked him up and took him all the way to California. Okay, basically is what they're saying. And the way they didn't find him in California. Okay, he bought a cell phone with a credit card that he had in his pocket, and he just bought a burner phone and called his wife. He's like, I'm in California? How did I get here? Oh, the last thing he remembers is skiing down the mountain.
That's crazy.
Or I shouldn't say that. I should say the last thing he remembers is skiing in general. I can't say that he was like actually in the process of skiing and then he just wakes up in California. But yeah, he remembers being there and skiing and then he doesn't remember anything. He just suddenly he's in California.
Abduction.
And since then, the authorities have contacted like every major transportation company to find out which trucker picked him up. And of course, nobody's come forward, and like that's weird because this was in the news all over the
You might notice like if you're in the desert somewhere between New York and California that there's a guy wearing ski clothes looking for a ride. And you might see all the news stories and just be like, seems kind of like that anymore. After you drove him all the way to California.
And the police in California did not believe him when he said that, when he told him,
I was skiing, man.
I was skiing in New York. Where? They're like, what do you mean where? This is California. I was skiing. And he's like, look at my clothes, right? Obviously, I was skiing.
Sure, buddy. Get in the car.
Then they're kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? And then they find out that there's a missing man from New York that everybody's looking for. And they're like, oh, okay, so maybe a trucker. So that story reminded me of a bunch of stories of like people who just kind of appear in places where they couldn't or shouldn't be. And there's quite a few of these throughout history, but the one that's most often spoken of is a very strange story. It's called the Green Children of Woolpit. Okay, it's a place in England, and I think in it's like the 13th century. Okay, so this is a long time ago. There are a bunch of farmers out there, and these two boy and a girl, these two children, just appear in a what was called a wolf pit. Where the town got its name, Woolpit. There's an enormous trap there, basically. They think it was for trapping wolves or whatever, but it's not really clear what it really was. It's an ancient thing. So they appear at the bottom of this thing, and they had decidedly, like, noticeably green skin, okay? And they were crying and everything, and they spoke a language that no one understood, it didn't seem to be any language that they'd ever heard. Now that's not saying a lot for people in the 13th century in England or whatever, but they took the children to the local like landowner, which was a lord of the castle, right? And he actually ended up taking care of them, and he spent all this time trying to figure out what language they were speaking because nobody could talk to them, and he couldn't identify the language either with any of his advisors and other people who are supposedly learned. And then of course there's the local I don't know what they would call them, the priest, the guys in the church. They are also learned, could read and write, and they couldn't identify the language. But eventually the kids wouldn't eat anything except for beans. The only thing they would eat is beans, okay? They rejected all of their food like they didn't know what it was. And eventually the boy just...
Sounds like they came from the Fey folk.
Yeah, the boy keeps getting sicker and sicker, and he eventually dies. But the girl, she eventually started to eat other foods besides beans over time, and she like it says that she eventually lost the green hue of her skin. She became normal looking, and she learned to speak English. And she eventually tells the story of them, that they came from a land called St. Martin's Land, that was underground, that had no sun, but that was it was just naturally lit or whatever, where everybody had green skin, and her and her brother were actually herding something that was the equivalent of sheep, and they chased one into a cave, like a tunnel. Okay, they're underground, so they're in a cave of some kind, but they chased it into a tunnel, and they got lost in there, and then they saw some light, and they followed the light, and then instead of taking them back to their big open cavern that was lit, they came outside, which they had never seen before. And they were terrified, and the light was really bright to them or whatever. Yeah, it's a very strange story.
Wild.
But she ends up, like, she got married and had children and everything, and lived a relatively normal life after that, but that was the story she told. And that's just a really odd appearing people story, right? There's another one that, and this one's hard to confirm. Like a lot of people say that this is, what would you call it, like an urban legend, but it doesn't seem to be an urban legend, but it's hard to corroborate. But anyway, this guy landed in Tokyo airport, and he goes into customs, and he shows a passport for a country that does not and never has existed. But the passport is full of stamps of countries that do exist. Okay. And of course, the customs officials there are like, what is this? And he shows them on the map. He's like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? Of course, I just came from there. And like, he shows them on the map where he's like, he was startled that it wasn't on the map. And he showed them where it was supposed to be. And I can't remember exactly where it was. But it was somewhere in Europe. A little tiny country. Okay. And like, everybody was confused. Like, the dude was like, why isn't my country on the fucking map? You know, and they're like, there's never been a country called that. And there's never been anything that, you know. So they don't know what to do with him. They can't let him into the country because his passport isn't from anywhere. And yet it appears to be like it's all worn and it has been stamped from all over the world, you know, and shit looks like he's used it everywhere. Like, so they didn't know what to do with him. So they put him in a hotel with some guards by his door to figure out. They were like, yeah, we're gonna put you up in this room in the hotel until we can figure out what to do. Well, according to the story, even though the door was guarded all night, the next day the guy was just gone. He was not in the hotel room, and he was never seen again.
Have you ever watched there's like a series, I think it's on Netflix, called Man in the High Tower? Or Man in the High Castle?
Sounds familiar.
That's what it...
I don't have Netflix.
It's like a fictional story set in sort of modern times, but as if we didn't win World War II.
Okay.
The Germans and the Japanese won. And so, like, the United States is split into two. Like, one side was taken over by Germany, and the other side was taken over by Japan.
The Atlantic side is Germany, and the Pacific side is Japan.
Yeah, and there's like a central area, which is like the neutral zone between them.
Yeah.
And so, but there's some weird shit going on with these videos. And
that sounds familiar.
I may have talked to you about this before, but because I was watching, there were, I think, the videos one or two seasons, but the videos, like, you don't get to see them initially, but this person like sits down to watch one, and it's like super secret, and people are dying to get this video passed along, and it's like this chick's sister is like, take this, watch it. And she runs off, and she's dead. So she watches the video, and you just see her face while she's watching it, like, what the fuck? Turns out the video is of an alternate reality.
Yeah.
Where they didn't win. You know, the Germany and Japan did not
showing
win.
our reality or whatever.
Yeah, some other reality. But there's a whole, and you find out there's all these videos that are going around, and Germany and Japan are trying to, like, not, you know, and Hitler's like obsessed with them. He's collecting them all. But he's freaking out. He's getting more and more paranoid because every video is like these other realities that, you know, or where they didn't win or something, you know. And it kind of turns out that there are all these alternate universes that, and some of the people have these weird things where they can pass through. And like one of the guys is this Japanese guy, and he does this meditation like nightly, you know, like he meditates or whatever, and like he starts to get control of it. And he can pass into one of the other worlds, and he goes into the other world. He's in the United States, you know, but he goes into the other world where the United States had won, and he sees all this stuff, and he's like, God, it's amazing, in this other world.
That's cool.
But in that world, his life's all messed up and everything. It's like, I don't know, it's just weird. But that's
like in the one where the United States won, his life's messed up.
Like his family life and everything's like all messed up, but in the world that he's in, where Japan and Germany won, like he's like really badass and solid. And so when he goes over to the other world, he's like a drunk and just like screwed up and everything. But he's not that guy when he goes over into his other person. Yeah. It's like his mind is traveling between the bodies.
Okay. That's interesting.
But it's more in depth, and of course I don't have all the answers because they're still making it, right?
Okay.
And sorry about spoiling. I know people out there.
Spoiler alert, late.
Whoops.
I never mind spoilers.
Okay, what I've watched has been out for a long time, so screw you if you're mad.
Yeah, he's not spoiling anything either.
Yeah, so that's what that makes me think of. Like these people, like that guy in the airport. He's like, he really did. Like he was going to all these countries in a different, parallel universe.
But in that story or whatever, he would show up and he would have the right passport because he was just kind of moving minds between bodies that did exist here, right? This guy shows up and has a passport for a country that doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true, but it's similar.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that like he somehow like crosses over.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think too.
With his belongings and shit, and like he's
in flight, dude. In the plane.
Yeah.
He somehow.
Yeah, because the plane that he was flying in was Malaysian Airlines. And like, you know, he just like shows up and he's like,
I shouldn't laugh at that.
Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean. It was the other Malaysian Airlines in the other world that like actually landed here. That was called something else.
Yeah, the Malaysian the Flight 370 is. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that.
Okay. Mass disappearances.
Yeah.
Malaysian Airlines. Like, how many people are on that plane? 200 and something.
Yeah, 200.
It just vanishes and like there's no trace anywhere. And then like somebody picked it up over here and other people picked it up over there. And it was like, wait, no, it couldn't have been there because it was radioing over here.
Very Bermuda Triangle-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the way that it just like it did some strange maneuvers, and then there was some other weird stuff about what was on it and the people that were on it. They were connected to like this ship, the Marines.
That's right. That there was like this briefcase.
Yeah.
Okay, so that movie that came out about Captain, whatever.
Yeah, the guy that got caught by the Somali pirates.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was captaining a ship.
I think it was Tom Hanks who played the guy, right?
Tom Hanks
that movie, whatever it was called. Right. There was actually. Supposedly, I think if I have this right, I could have this wrong, but there was like 2 Marines on that boat. I think it was that boat,
and they were guarding something.
They were guarding something. It was being transported. And it's like
Then they died on that ship because everybody but the captain died.
Yeah.
But then their fucking IDs turned up.
Yeah, their passports had been on that Malaysian Airlines.
Yeah, were being used by 2 people who got on the Malaysian Airlines.
Wow, shit.
And then the ship the plane disappears. You know, like it's.
Don't. Well, we have to look that up because I remember thinking I had that story figured out, and then I had gotten some.
Cantu told you were wrong.
Yeah, I think so. Like there was some parts that, but that was a weird scenario because some of those stories like where the sources where I had read those things like I couldn't find later.
So you came from a different universe. You read those in a different universe.
Yeah.
In this one where that didn't happen.
Yeah. I think I originally got here with the Roanoke colony. But that was another one that I was thinking of.
Croatoan. Right? That was what was written on that was one of the only clues.
Croatoans. Croatoan written on the tree. So the Roanoke colony is like this colony came over here from Europe or whatever. They brought this boat full of people. And then they get off and they once they kind of get established or whatever, they've got some shit built and they've got, you know, they're kind of going, well, the boat's like, okay, you know,
they're going to go back and come back.
They've got something like sustainable. They've got shit figured out. They don't need the boat anymore. So they go off and they get more people and they come back to the place and they go on shore. Nobody's there. There's not a single body there.
There's no bodies.
Yeah. It doesn't look like there was a struggle.
Yeah.
It's like everybody put down their shit and just left.
Yeah.
Completely vanished and there's no trace and there's no evidence. And then it was just theorized that it was like this Indian tribe, the Croatoan or whatever.
Yeah.
That they were very warlike, and that was like carved into like a big central tree in the town square or whatever.
Yeah. But it doesn't make sense because there were no bodies and there was no sign of a struggle, and it's more like
yeah, that's just kind of like
they missing 411 into the woods,
right? And that idea that it was the warlike Indian tribes that just destroyed this whole colony was just kind of like a, you know,
they threw it out there,
a scripter like
yeah, they threw out that the guy took a truck,
right? He just got to ride it with a truck
because there's no explanation and people don't like that.
Yeah, but that whole story is so similar to so many of these weird, you know, disappearances of seemingly everybody that was building something somewhere. in ancient times. Like we find all these structures that are just half built and just like everyone's gone.
Yeah, or like just like everybody just down tools and took off.
Right.
Giant blocks left in the road. So many of those ancient sites have enormous things in the quarry that are the biggest ones ever made, but were never completed. Like the unfinished obelisk it's way bigger than any other obelisk ever.
I found out that obelisk actually has I think the reason why they never used it is because it actually has like some kind of natural,
that's what they say.
fissure crack in it.
Yeah.
They figured out, but they just left it.
So my problem with that is that they say that about a lot of these things that are left in the quarry, that there is some crack or some flaw. And I'm like, that happened everywhere in the world. The biggest ones that they carved were almost completed and then they found a flaw all over the world. I'm just like, come on, show me the flaw.
So this kind of reminds me, I know I'm
No, it's all right.
kind of going off on a tangent, but I think I took a note of this.
Tangent.
This idea.
This is the tangent cube. Took a note of what?
This idea that I had. Let's see. Okay, whoa. Here's another idea that I had. Okay. I didn't write a note of this one, but I was thinking about Babel, the Tower of Babel, and the idea of like people just putting down their tools and just vanishing.
Yeah.
Right? That sort of idea that. Anyway, with impacts, you know, from extraterrestrial impacts or whatever.
Yeah.
There was one of these stories that I read when I was doing all this research on the Tower of Babel where, and I can't remember which tradition this is in, but it was something along the lines of like the people were mad that the gods had control of the skies. And the gods had commanded man to be on the ground, the terrestrial, you know, you stay there, the skies are for us. And
Right.
And so these people were sort of rebelling against that idea, and this one guy like was, you know, they had the idea that the gods were immortal, right?
Yeah,
And they couldn't be killed, and so this dude like
threw a spear.
you know, throws a spear at one of them and it kills him, and he's like, they can't be killed, so fuck them, let's build this tower into the heavens and blah blah blah.
They're mortal. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me that like, okay, that could be them. What they're really trying to say is that these impacts
Can be stopped.
Yes, they were the gods, just like the planets and all these stuff were the gods.
Yeah.
Like these heavenly bodies that come in and they destroy the world. Like, so the Tower of Babel is some 600 and something years after the flood,
Yeah.
which could have been caused by an impact.
Yeah.
And so they're like, what do we do, right? For this whole 600 years, they're still remembering like their total annihilation, pretty much. And they're like, you know, can this be killed? In other words, they're asking themselves, can we develop the technology to destroy or to protect ourselves from these things?
Yeah.
And so they figure out, like, they build some shit or whatever, and they actually, like, hit one and destroy it or something that effect.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
So then they're like, yes, we can do it. So they come together and they start building this massive tower. But one of the gods sees what they're doing and comes down and just destroys them. And
That makes it make sense why they said, so we shall not be scattered across the face of the earth.
right. So they were built in the process of developing the technology.
A name. They were making a name for themselves. A shim.
Yeah.
A ship.
Yeah. They were in the process of developing the technology to take out the next asteroid
Yeah.
or cometary impact or whatever, or, you know, nudge it like we are.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it in time, and they got hit by another one.
Didn't you say, when you first told that, I think you said that you threw a spear and some blood fell to the earth.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't actually destroy it. You threw the spear and the blood.
So, like, they did a test, and pieces of it came, but it didn't hit.
Yeah. So they figured out they could do it.
Yeah.
You know. That's what I thought just recently. Like, oh,
That's cool. Yeah, and an impact would cause a lot of people to disappear.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, that was how I was sort of tying it in. Talking about it disappearing.
Yeah, I think I did see the theory on Malaysian 370 that somebody said that what if it got hit by a bolide up there and just completely disintegrated it? Like, it would be...
I thought that was my theory.
You see that? Some guy told me. Some guy told me that. But back to, like, appearing people. And of course, in some sense, the people that here had to disappear from somewhere, right? Like
Yeah.
this guy skiing. So there's another one that's really strange, and this one's more corroborated. I don't have all the details of this one, so I've got it in front of me. It's 1593, okay, so October 26th in Mexico City. A Spanish soldier suddenly is walking around the square, right? Plaza Mayor. He's in Mexico City's Plaza Mayor. And the guards there notice him, and like this dude's like fully decked out in Spanish like armor. You know? Okay. He's got the freaking, the weird Spanish armor hat and shit, conquistador hat. And he's like got his spear and he's kind of like staggering around, like, but it looks like he thinks he's a god, right? He's kind of trying, and that's what he was doing because he was on guard. He gets arrested, and he tells them that he was in the Philippines, and that some like political guy, the mayor or the governor, whatever, the magistrate had been assassinated, and so everybody was at high alert, and he was put on guard, and he was kind of like walking around in the Philippines in Manila, and then suddenly there's a bright flash of light, and next thing he knows, he's a little bit out of it, and he keeps trying to walk like he's on guard, but now he's in Mexico City. He doesn't know how the fuck he got there. And of course, nobody in Mexico believed him. All the authorities were like, whatever, dude. They throw him in the dungeon, throw him in prison, where he sits there for 3 months until a ship arrives from the Philippines, and that is the first news that they got of the assassination of the guy that this dude claimed was assassinated. Which he couldn't have known if he was actually in Mexico City, because this is before like the communication. So the ship comes with the news. After 3 months, it gets there and has the news. That's how long it takes a ship to get from the Philippines to Mexico, right? So they were like, maybe he was telling the truth. They can't figure it out, and so then they communicate with the officials on the ship, and they're like, yeah, like there is a guard in Manila that's named that. The guy's name is I'll forget. Doesn't matter. Gil Perez. Yeah, that was his name. So he they ask, and they're like, yeah, and he kind of disappeared. So they put him on the ship, and he sails back to Manila. So apparently he somehow teleported from the Philippines to Mexico.
Yeah, that's crazy shit.
Yeah, that's a really strange one.
It would really suck if that happened with like a planet.
He teleported to a different planet?
No, if a planet teleported right over here.
That's how the moon got here.
Shit!
Yeah, or a black hole.
Yeah, please don't teleport. Well, black holes are the
teleports.
Yeah, that's the
Holes can't teleport. Actually, wormholes do move around. They're worms.
Yeah.
So there's one more in here that I found interesting, and this is let's see.
Yeah, that's definitely a serious engineering problem. Move this hole.
Yeah.
That's what they did to the temple, or that temple in Egypt that was near the Aswan. It was in the Aswan Dam area or whatever. It's like carved into the hillside, right? Yeah. And they're like, we need to move this temple, but
yeah,
it's
like
a hole.
Yeah, it'd be like moving one of those rock cut temples at Petra. We need to move this. It's just a hole, a really complicated one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I got one more of these. I think is it in here? No, not Caspar.
All right, while you're looking for that, I'm just gonna mention this other little note that I took.
Okay.
It's totally off subject, but it's cool.
That's cool.
So, thinking about agriculture and how you can really develop this as a science, and how difficult that would be. Because like typically now, like when you become a professional at something, the Malcolm Gladwell idea is that like 10,000 hours or whatever. So like when you're playing an instrument or whatever, you get to do these things like over and over and over and over and over and over. Well, if you're a farmer, by the time you're like 50 years old, you've only done it 40 times. If you started at 10.
Yeah. That's true.
It's like, how do you become pro at something you've only done that many times?
You live for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that not a good idea? Like
No,
the
I
idea that
think-
people in ancient times like seem to live a lot longer. Maybe they could have time to get good at it before they died.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, yeah. So if that's correct, that could explain part of it. Like, because like another problem, the problem with agriculture is like, who decided that they were gonna start culling these native grasses into grains, and that their great grandsons were gonna complete the job.
Yeah, exactly.
You
That's
know.
what I'm saying.
So like, yeah, like that would work. More, I mean, even still, I wouldn't think if I lived 1,000 years, I wouldn't be like, I'm gonna spend the next 400 years making this into food. Like, fuck that. That takes too long.
Yeah.
I mean, because you have to do it every year,
Right.
and like you're not gonna get anything from it for
Great.
like hundreds of years.
It's
Like,
part of the same problem we talked about with figuring out procession. Like,
yeah,
if you decided at an extremely young age that you were going to very scientifically,
Ta-da.
measure the motions of the stars, by the time you're dead, you've noticed that something has shifted 1 degree
yeah.
of arc.
I think it's moved.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. But so on that I would say that it's a little more explainable because, well, maybe not. I don't know. Like, I always think of astronomers as being science, so they're going to be keeping records, whereas farmers are just like throwing shit in the dirt and trying
Yeah,
to make it
that's
grow.
we're growing shit, and I'm like we've had these grapes for 2 or 3 years, and I'm still looking at them like,
I don't even know what to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how are
I've been
these-
doing this for 3 years and I have no fucking idea what I'm doing.
and we have the benefit of like having the Oracle and fucking all these consultants and people that have been doing it for 30 years, and it's
Yeah.
like, damn it.
Yep. I keep coming back to what the neighbor said out there.
Yeah.
About the time you figure it out, you die.
Yeah. All right. Quick aside. Go back. Where are we at?
The one that I was looking for is not in here, so.
From memory. Let's hear it.
Well, I can't remember it because it was complicated. It was basically like it was like a servant, and I think it was in, I can't remember if it was in France or England, but anyway, this guy kept disappearing out of his out of the place he was supposed to be in the castle and appearing like hundreds of miles down the road, and then he would like come staggering back and this was again 1600s or something like that, so he has to walk back. And he like appears and he's all ragged and shit. He's like, what the fuck? I was like sleeping and I woke up in the road and like hundreds of miles away. And this happened to him multiple times. He kept just vanishing out of the castle and appearing like really far away.
Yeah, that would really piss me off. Like, when you're playing a video game and it like auto saves and like something happens and you're like, oh shit! I gotta go all the way back over here.
Yeah. Yeah, the power cuts out and you're like, fuck! You almost got to the bottom of the
Is that happening in real life? Like, you just keep appearing like miles away. You're like, damn it!
Yeah. Fucking lagged.
But that reminds me of like one of those hallucinations I had when I was a kid, where like I was in my living room, and then like suddenly I
hold
was
on.
like way up in the fucking sky,
Yeah.
standing on something that seemed to be like some type wire or some shit. And
Yeah.
I'm like up there with the very tops of the beech trees, way above the house, and then I'm back inside, and then I'm back out there, and I'm like, ah!
It's like,
It happened a couple of times.
was anybody in there with you or anything?
No.
Oh, man, so it really been happening.
Mom and Dad had left. There was like a storm happening. It was like twilight.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And like I just appear out there in the middle of this fucking storm, and it's like
And you're like
trees are
trying
all-
to balance on this fucking.
the treetops are blowing around, and I'm like on this. It feels like I'm standing on a wire. I can't see anything, but I'm just like, oh shit! And the house is way down there, and then I'm back in the living room, and I'm like, well, what the fuck?
Have we talked about the quote unquote fevers you used to have on
Yeah,
this
yeah.
before? Okay.
I think I even told that story already on one of them. But
Man, that's. And then there's the one where you're like,
But like, why couldn't it have put me down the street?
instead of up in the air, you teleported the wrong way.
But what do you think is happening? Seriously, like with this guy in California? And
To me, I like this, and then some of the missing 411 stuff, and then of course the Bermuda Triangle shit, and then like Malaysia Airlines. All this stuff seems like there's. Well, okay.
There's some other rules of the universe we don't
Yeah,
know.
there's
Stay in the light.
like, and I think things like the what we talked about last week, the bowl in the ocean, like shit like that, is implying there's some other forces that we just have no clue exist, right? And I think that if those interact strangely with, because clearly they don't happen all the time. Like you can fly through, like millions of people fly through or sail through the Bermuda Triangle and nothing happens to them.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, something does happen, and it seems to be like a special event in like a storm. You know, like
Yeah.
storms happen, but if you know, like imagine if they were completely invisible, right? If they were totally invisible, it would be, and then one day you're like walking around and suddenly you feel like you're getting pelted with shit. You're like, what the fuck? And you hear all this crazy noise, but there's nothing to see. You know,
That's kind of like dark matter, the idea that there's all of this shit that it's kind of what you were talking about last time, where somehow through the forces in an indirect way, it's affecting our universe. But as far as we know, no matter, nothing
Yes,
that's
correlated to it,
tangible
yeah.
to us interacts with it
Yeah.
in any way.
yeah,
But it does interact in a way that is through one of the forces,
right,
gravity.
yeah, and we still don't know what that is either.
Right.
We can't even figure out what the hell that is.
So it's like some of these forces.
And it could be
cross over.
multiple, yeah, and it could be multiple forces, and could also combine with strange things, like if the forces themselves affect like large crystal deposits beneath the surface or whatever. Like this is what people think is happening in Marfa, Texas, with the Marfa lights. Like there's a flat desert pan out there, and they know that there's a lot of crystal, like large crystalline deposits beneath the surface of this area, and almost every night you can go out there and see these like freaking balls of light floating around, you know, and some people think
Only
that,
when the moon's gone.
some people think that that it's piezoelectric, right? That somehow there's stresses on the crystal beneath the surface, and that's causing a piezoelectric effect and resulting in these plasma balls that are electrical in some way. But that doesn't really, I mean, like if that's what's happening, it's still a giant unexplained. Like how, I mean, do people like go off and make, you know, floating balls of light with a crystal? I don't think anybody's ever done that. Van de Graaff generators can do that, make balls of plasma that seem to move around, but that's not a crystal. Oiled and everything. So anything, what I'm talking about is that it seems to be a convergence of forces that we know about and forces that we don't know about that are coming together and then causing strange interactions with materials that we know about but don't know that they have these properties when all these forces come together, and that results in something that changes space-time. Because if you look at these disappearing and appearing stories, and then there's also an entire, like I tie these in with the Mandela effect, which is where people seem to remember things that are not the way they are now. Like people remember, you know, like certain things being spelled differently all their lives, and then they look at it and it's not spelled that way, and like this is a phenomenon all over the world. People, and some of the more extreme Mandela effects are like people remembering land masses being different. There's a whole lot of people that remember things like New Zealand being in a different place, you know, relative to Australia, like a shitload of people. Like they're like, I remember this clearly from looking at maps. And of course, a lot of people explain it like, well, you know, memory is fallible, and it's been proven scientifically that.
And then fish fall from the sky.
Right. That's right. That's what you always remind them, bro. Sometimes it rains fish. Yeah. And cats. And dogs.
Peanuts.
Yeah, peanuts and coins. Like large masses of flesh.
And foreign coins from countries that don't exist.
Yeah.
That's
how that.
the name of the guy's passport.
Right.
Who should have.
Clearly, you're just underestimating the lengths that Spaniards will go to play a joke on somebody. So
That's what it was. That guy was flying in a plane that vanished. It just so happened to be in a position that put him in a different plane. But all of his change fell out of his pocket. And it rained somewhere. People found these coins that were like from a country that doesn't exist. And then, meanwhile, that guy got arrested.
So there's the Mandela effect, and then there's something called, people call it glitch in the matrix or time slips. So there's lots of anecdote. Obviously, this is all anecdotal, but there's tons of these stories, and some of them come from really credible sources where people, for a brief period of time, seem to experience a different time period. Like, you can kind of untangle that. For a brief period of time, they experience a different time period. Okay.
I like that.
And sometimes it's extreme. Like, people have seen what appear to be like long extinct animals in like national parks, mammoths, dinosaurs. People have been walking through large areas, like, big metropolitan cities, and then they'll look, and in this direction, the entire city it's the same city, but it's clearly from several hundred years ago, right? Where they're like looking over there, and there's like horse and buggy, and like people wearing, they're in London, the guy's wearing like a tall top hat and shit like that. But over here, it's like cars. People have encountered people on the road, like.
I think that happens in Bandera like every weekend.
But then it disappears. It like goes away.
Yeah.
People have encountered.
I could have sworn there was like a couple of guys having like a gunfight on Main Street.
Oh yeah, I've seen that too. See, and like that could happen and be a time slip, and we would never know.
Yeah, that's right.
Because those guys come out and do it every week. Or do they? Yeah. What? Just go mention it in Bandera, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" Oh shit. There are ones where people are like driving on a highway, like a long stretch of lonely, empty road or whatever, and they see a car that appears looks like it's having trouble, and it's kind of a classic, So they pull up alongside and they look, and there's like a woman dressed in period clothes matching the car, and a kid next to her, and they look terrified, and they're looking at the car that the people are in that's modern, and they're like terrified or whatever, and the guy like is saying, "Do you need help? Pull over, whatever," and then the car
88 miles per hour, Marty.
yeah, disappears. People have found hotels that don't exist, stayed at them, like they're driving from one place to another, and they find this little out of the way, quaint looking hotel, and they stay in there, and they're like, wow, it's really, there's no AC or whatever, and it's kind of like, it's interesting and rustic and old, but they think it's like a gimmick, like that they're doing it on purpose. That everything seems to be from 100, 150 years ago, right? But then when they're on their way back from wherever they were going, they're like, let's stop at that old cool hotel again. They can't find it. They find the lot where it was, it's totally empty.
I've had this happen to me many times, and it's probably
Getting lost.
I've always told myself that no, this is something different, but
Yeah.
I've always told myself like it's just me
Pretty.
sort of not paying attention as well as I thought I was, but like I'll be driving at night
Oh yeah.
on like a lonely road or whatever, and it's like
Stay
suddenly
in
there's
the
a car like right behind me,
yeah.
but that's one thing, but there'll
Then
be
it's suddenly not there.
Yeah, there'll be a car behind me, and I'm just like, these headlights are just, I'm seeing them like all the time, and then suddenly like I don't see them, and I'm looking, and it's just gone.
Right, and you're on a freeway where they can't just turn right.
Yeah.
They have to get off on an exit ramp, and you kind of.
Yeah, there's been plenty of them where I'm just like, what the fuck happened to that car that was behind me? Did they just turn their headlights off or some shit?
Right, now they're driving dark. Yeah.
It's weird, but I'm always like, skirp derp myself, like, it's just, I just wouldn't
Well,
pay
there's
attention.
probably a monster out there that just has two really bright eyes
Oh God.
that look exactly like headlights in your rearview mirror. Fuck that.
Pretty.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So anyway, what I'm saying is I tie all these, I don't tie them together, but I see them as being similar. Okay? The people are seeing time slips where they either experience or see something that is clearly not from this era, that is from this in the past. The disappearances that are very strange, the appearances that are very strange. Like, all of these things I think are similar in the Mandela effect, where people seem to remember something that seems like it was from a kind of a slightly different alternate universe, like you were talking about, right? From that show that we were totally not giving, ruining for people.
Yeah.
Because it's already out, maybe not in other universes. It's not out yet. But I think all these things might be related. They seem to be related to some issue with space-time. That's how I see it. Like, that there's something going on that that could be explained with physics if we knew all the physics. If we really did have the manual for how the universe works, final edition, we probably could explain this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm thinking about. I was again listening to this.
Kyle has this thinking face that looks like he's disagreeing with you.
That's why.
So whenever I'm like saying all this shit, and then like he's like looking like whatever I'm saying is bullshit, and I'm like, what's going on? I've had to learn that he's not doing that. He's thinking about something.
I was trying to figure out how to correlate, how to put this other idea into what you're saying, and I was listening to this, John Anthony West talking with Joe Rogan about, and it was like near the end of the podcast, they briefly touched on these two things that I thought was a fascinating way to look at things. And this is apparently, something that John Anthony West has put a lot of thought into, and I've never heard it ever spoken in this way before from anyone. But he was having a conversation with the geologist
Schock?
Robert
Schock.
Enclosure. Schock. And they both agreed on these two things, and one of them had to do with evolution, the other one had to do with creation. These two ideas, and John Anthony West was saying they're both there's this scientific language or not scientific language. These mistakes in the language used. He called it science speak. Okay, which is this sort of degradation of the language. It becomes quote unquote science speak, and one of them was evolution through natural selection.
Oh yeah.
And the idea that natural, when you look it up in the dictionary, is something that is somehow, it's like a process that happens automatically, right? Without any, it's like there's no
guiding force.
Right. There's no intelligent thing.
Yeah.
It's implying that there's no intelligence. But then you have this thing called selection.
Yeah.
This word selection, which implies like an intelligent choice. It's like and he used a couple of examples for selection, like
you're selecting apples out of a big pile of it.
right,
Good ones.
or someone gets selected to be, the speaker or something like that.
But it's a making a choice. Is what
Right.
what it means. Yeah. And like,
But the path
kind of free will.
the path of an electron or whatever, or what doesn't select the path that it's going to take or whatever.
Right.
Okay. There's that problem. So natural selection is like this. What the fuck, right? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then there's intelligent design, and he was
like redundant because you can't design something without intelligence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So design is like inherent in the idea of design is this.
It's the intelligence. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, anyway, what he was saying is that it seems like there's this. What he believes, I guess, is really the thing that interested me more. I'll try to communicate this correctly. I just heard that little bit, but he was basically saying that looking at all of the stuff that the ancient Egyptians built and everything that their culture and everything developed around this idea that, like, yes, there is an evolution, but it's like a design too.
Yeah.
And so it's like our existence is not as mundane as the scientists want to put it in like, oh, it's just all by accident intelligently. It's like sort of this way that they want to like make everything so not mysterious and interesting.
Yeah.
Because their lives don't have meaning and they're trying to, it's like, I don't know, the way he was just saying it was just like, holy shit, but that inherent in the nature of the evolution of the universe is this intelligence, this selection, right? So that everything that happens, it's not just man or the progress of life, the progression of life, but it's all of these things. It's the geometry, it's the rule, it's the physics, it's everything that's intelligent.
Yeah.
And so it's at the root, at the core of all existence is, I guess, this
implication of intelligence, really.
Yeah, this agency.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about these strange things, this is what I was trying to plug in, right? Like this idea that you were talking about having the manual for the universe final edition, we could figure it out. But it's like whatever this creative force is, like creativity is at the core. It's not like there was a god sitting around with a big white beard that was like, nah, today I'll decide to create X. It's like all of it is a creative force, and the creative, you can't create without without intention. I guess is the idea.
Yeah, there's I don't remember which religions, maybe it's Hindu, but they talk about the ongoing creation, that God is continuously creating everything, and this is actually
so
been,
I have to really work on this. I just heard this today, and it kind of was like, what? And I need to go back and listen a little more, and I want to look more into John Anthony West's ideas in that area.
Yeah, I need to get Serpent
really
in the sky.
interesting. Yeah, but
I mean, come on, Serpent.
Like it's making me think about these strange, just all these random things in a new way that I haven't ever thought about them in that. You know, I'm always talking about how, well, I want to kind of think about the laws of physics and try to figure out how could this take place, and then some things when I'm just totally I have no idea how this could happen. But this idea that John Anthony West was talking about kind of implies that these things will happen. In that it's like you're saying, it's a constant creative force and it's intelligent in a way that it's like, how do we know? When did the creation stop?
Right,
it didn't.
Yeah, there was I think this was said to a UFO contactee, but he asked them. Okay, so obviously, again, this is an anecdote. And this guy is saying, I got picked up, they came down. This is an old one, so he's not an abduction. They landed, and they offered him a ride. They wanted to see the stars, and he got in with them, and he starts asking them questions. Right? They were like, do you have any questions? And one of the things he asked him is about God and creation. And they argued with each other. They're different aliens, and they were Nordics. They were all blonde, human-looking ones or whatever. Angels, basically like angels. But they were arguing with each other over God. They did not agree. And one of them said, no, God continuously creates from second to second. He's creating the universe, and if he ever stopped, it would all disappear. It would vanish instantly. Stop doing it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, new food for thought for me, for sure.
So you were saying that basically because I was talking about. Was it spawned from me saying that I'm I see all these things as being similar? Is that
well, yeah, and you were talking about if we had the universe, the manual for the universe final edition, maybe we'd see clearly this is, and so that made me think well, maybe the manual is always changing.
Yeah,
it's not just that we're always wrong about it, but that it's always, there are always new things being created. So as we even though our lifetimes in this whole technologically advanced era that we're in is relatively it's minuscule in terms of the vastness of time.
Yeah.
But even still, every second it's creating, so there are new things, and we might have just discovered dark matter because it's brand new.
Right. It hasn't showed up yet, but it affects.
It's it's starting to happen. Right? And so that was an interesting idea that these, that someone could just randomly appear down the road and just shit, and then have to run back to where they were. And that happens multiple times. It's not that I need this idea to explain it, but it's an interesting thing to think of. If there's a creative force that's still working on and changing and making new things happen, and their effects. I don't know if they're known or I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just as new things are created.
I would say that I think time is clearly not as linear as we think. Deja vu, everybody's experienced deja vu, which is the sensation where you're remembering things as they're happening, but you can't, or at least I've never been able to think to myself, this is about to happen. It just, when it does, I'm I recognize it. And I have a sensation of having seen it before, but I have to see it first. In other words, I can't predict anything in deja vu, right? And usually it doesn't seem
That's
to
what
happen.
happens to me too, yeah.
It doesn't. I've tried it before. When it's happening, I'm do I know it's about to happen? I don't. But as it's happening, I'm yeah, that's right. This is all right. Yeah. And to me, that's some kind of There's something weird happening with time right there.
Welcome.
Or maybe there's a slight discontinuity with my physical self and my higher self, or whatever, however you want to say it. You know.
Stay in the light, Exile.
So time seems to be part of all this stuff, like the things that people call time slips or glitches in the Matrix. You know, now the glitch in the Matrix, obviously, it comes from the idea of deja vu shown in the movie in the Matrix, where it's like something happens again because something is being corrected or changed. The creation is changing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another avenue. We talked about the athletes getting better and better and
Yeah.
all that shit. It's like, and this. Okay, so we're only so good, and then someone breaks the record, and then everybody starts breaking the record.
Yeah.
Because it's not because it's because the first person breaking the record was the creation of that ability.
That's interesting.
And so then it became capable. It's like
Then everybody can do it. Yeah.
they were the first to tap into the new creation, the new creative. So
The same
this
thing
is what
happens-
he was talking about with evolution. It's not natural selection. It is an evolution through a creative force.
Yeah.
So it's like we're engaging in it all the time, and this that made me think of like the fact that these ancient people could move all these massive fucking blocks and do all this crazy shit that we're just like, how the fuck can you do that? Was because they were doing the same thing. And we remember how we were correlating that, like
Yeah.
with the athletes always breaking the records, and we were talking about
Yeah. They kept doing the same thing, getting better and better at it. And
Right.
And then they were pushing themselves, like, can we move this fucking giant block?
yeah. So it's like we're all part of this. We're all part of nature. We are natural, and thus we are part of the creative force. And this is why, you know, these great artists that they're tapping into that. And there's like the thing you talked about with the artists that were like they're borrowing
Yeah.
from that creative force.
Yeah,
and
the
they're
muse. Yeah.
yeah, they're making these things, but they're like, well, it's not me doing it. It's like I'm tapping into
Yeah.
this.
I'm more like a conduit.
Right, they're a conduit, and so
Yeah.
like it's like we create new technologies or we create beautiful works of art that it's just like mind blowing, never been done. We create massive, beautiful architectural structures, and they get more and more complex, or they start out extremely complex because they had tapped into some creative
Yeah.
force that was then lost,
Right. Where the rules were changed.
or the rules were changed. Yeah.
They could move those giant blocks because the rules were different back then.
But I guess what I was kind of going into is that it is that because we are a part of it,
We're changing the rules.
we are changing the rules by our
Yeah.
intention and desire.
Yeah.
So now we're changing the rules in a different way. You know,
Yeah.
today
Right.
as we get more into this quantum shit, it's like how do we know that we didn't like
Make
we're,
that.
we're not making this stuff happen, and we're part of it. It's like I guess what I'm trying to go on here is like, you know, I've bitched about this idea that like the atomic bomb is not natural, man. You know, it's like, well, yeah, it is, because we're fucking natural.
Yeah. I just had a really interesting idea. Like, you know, the UFO sightings happen with waves? They're called flaps, right? So, like, yeah. Every single time it happens like this, it's very strange. Like, this is one of the things that's been strange about it. It's like there will be a sighting, and there will be an enormous number of sightings in that area. And people have said, oh, it's because that first sighting's in the news, and then everybody's looking and seeing UFOs. That's not true. But that is so bullshit. Like,
But it might make more people look at the sky more often. So you might have a high.
right, but there's the flaps are like, and then they die out, and everybody's still looking at the sky because everybody's been seeing them. So like that kind of
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. Like there's the Belgian wave, and then the one that happened over Washington D.C. and then there's like, you know, people say like, well, what if they land on the White House lawn? Well, they damn near did. Like they sent fucking fighters after them. But I'm thinking like this, like there's clearly something to do with consciousness attached to the UFO phenomena. Like there's something about it that is attached to consciousness and human consciousness, and the idea that we're part of the creation, and then we have these flaps, these waves. Right, there's one sighting, just like the guy breaking the record, and then suddenly everybody does it. Like, so one guy sees a UFO, and then everybody sees a UFO, and they're really there. I'm not saying that it's being made up.
Right.
Right, like that's really interesting. That concept.
And if there are, you know, multiple layers of reality,
Yeah.
you know, that and spiritual stuff. Like it's like the more like we had these enlightenment,
Yeah, and
things
then
that
there's
happened
like revival periods too.
Yeah, the spiritual enlightenment period, just like everybody starts having these crazy like magical spiritual experiences where they're experiencing God and all of this stuff, and it's like it just spreads like mad.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, it happens like the phenomenon of speaking in tongues also spreads like that. One person will start it, and then suddenly it explodes.
So okay, so growing up, in the church, the Christian religion, there was this thing that was, what is church, right? There was this conversation, Bible school, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I remember being taught, like, well, church is not a building, it's a gathering.
Yeah.
It's a gathering. And there was this idea that, like, yeah. My God! I've got a monster and he's kicking your ass. No. Yeah, I never played that game, so I don't really know how it works. Don't get mad, nerds.
Magic the Gathering. It's a church.
But yeah, there was this whole thing about, like, when, and I think this is something that Jesus said, or somebody, whatever, it's in the Bible somewhere. Two or more people gather together to whatever, to
Believe in God, remember me.
yeah, that's church. So it's like this idea that you're talking about, where these things come in waves, and it's like the more people become aware, or their consciousness is focused on this idea, it becomes true. And there's the whole thing about faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. You must get this, and you need other people. You need to congregate in order to do this. And we've seen it happen in science too, like when, like the creation of the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
Obviously these dudes were like all badasses, but it's like, hey, we need to do this thing to. It's like, dude, all this shit was theoretical.
Yeah.
And they just all get together and they just do it.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
Art Bell, the original host for Coast to Coast, he like invented the show. He got interested in this concept. And one night he ran an experiment and it terrified him. But his experiment was basically like, okay, because he's got 60 million listeners or whatever, for 4 hours at night. He's like, let's all, like, he timed it and everything. He's like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on getting rain to somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but somewhere that had a bad drought. He's like, so we're like, I'll count it down, and then we'll spend 1 minute just like thinking about rain for this area. And like, there was a fucking flood that night in that area.
That's badass.
Okay.
The rain dance.
Yeah. And like, so it's again the same thing. Like, he had all these millions of people listening to him, and people love Coast to Coast. They love Art Bell, right? And so he's like, let's try this audience. And then they did it, and like, there was this humongous freaking storm. It just showed up and
See, there's something there about this, like, the congregation.
Yeah, and that, like, when we've talked about how people can change, the random number generators, and they think about it or whatever. Well, there are universities that are constantly running these random number generators all the time. Well, those during global events that, like 9/11, where everybody's the tsunami that took out like all of India, one of India's coasts or whatever, where everybody's paying attention, like a shitload of people are paying attention to it all over the world. Those random number generators become decidedly less random.
Yeah,
during those periods.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
When global consciousness is forming. And you know what this reminds me of? It's Rupert Sheldrake's
Stay in the light.
what does he call it? The damn it, what is it
Maybe
called?
that's why
the morphic fields, right?
Maybe that's why the aliens conceal themselves all the time. Because if they came down here and they showed, and we all knew that they were there, they're like scared of that power, whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. And it's happened before. In major ways, like in the ancient text, there's like these massive things in the entire.
Yeah. I mean, the Tower of Babel seems to be partly like about that too.
Right.
Like,
they were all in one language.
Yeah. Nothing shall be withheld from them. Like, they can do anything if they're fucking like this.
So there's this other thing in the Christian tradition that one of the things that Jesus spoke about was that it was kind of couched in terms of gifts from God, that there are more gifts than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is ask. And if you
Ask
believe,
you shall receive. Yeah.
Yeah, you've already received it.
Right. You already have it. Yeah.
You already have it.
Are you preaching?
No, it's just it's like that idea of like all these people focusing on rain in this area. It's like they're sort of like asking
Yeah.
and then it's already happening, and there's like boom. It's,
yeah. There's a flood.
But if it's just like so this idea of prayer and all these different religions, meditation, and all this kind of shit is like the communication with Godhead or whatever.
I was thinking of it as like because we're not really as individuals, we're not that great at focusing on something for like we're totally focusing on one thing for long periods of time. But if you have 1 million people doing it, there's a big effect. So all the meditation and prayer is kind of like, it looks to me like people trying to get good at getting an effect like that where you can do it yourself, right? You don't need millions of people. Like if millions of people kind of sort of not very well focusing on something for a little bit can do something badass, then maybe one guy who can really fucking focus, can get similar effects just by himself. Like you got to get really good at it. Like the guy that put his consciousness in the path of the laser and fucking dimmed
exactly.
Great.
It's just interesting how
Stay in the light.
this little idea that John Anthony West was talking about, struck me as like, wow, that's really cool the way he thought about it. And then
I want to hear it now.
Like thinking just in all
I've
these
listened to that
terms of
show.
like all these mysteries and all of this shit that we're talking about, plugging that simple little idea in, sort of, it's just one of those things. It's sort of like you can find all these correlations in the ancient wisdom, the ancient texts and things that sort of point to that or sort of corroborate that idea.
Yeah. And the natural selection thing too, I like the survival of the fittest. That's like, I was thinking about this when you were saying how he was talking about that this is a scientific term that's wrong or whatever. Like it's,
Science speak, whatever.
It's really not survival of the fittest. If it is anything, it's non-survival of the non-fit, not survival of the fittest. You don't have to be the fastest. You just have to be not the slowest.
Yeah. I wish I could remember exactly how he put it, but he was talking about the sort of the quackademics, right? The modern scientific movement is so materialistic.
Yeah.
And it's like he was just really laying it on these guys, like just trashing them.
Yeah.
Saying that their lives are so meaningless.
Yeah, they want to project that onto everybody.
Because they are not creative. They're not the creative type. They don't have that ability to tap into that creative. They're just, and their lives are so meaningless and dry and devoid of that creative force that they want to shape the ideas of the universe to fit their life or their world. That's pretty hardcore freaking criticism.
Well, I mean, like that, like Robert Heinlein said, most quote-unquote scientists are bean counters with button sorters. Like they're not creative; they're catalogers. And I can't remember who said this, but somebody talking about archaeology. They were saying that the kind of person you want to send out in the field who's going to pick up every little potsherd is not necessarily the guy you want to tell the story of that civilization.
I'd be interested, anybody that listens to this podcast, and you're hearing this, go listen to that episode with John Anthony West and Joe Rogan. I'd be interested. Freaking send us an email.
Yeah,
I want to know what you guys think of that, because it's kind of like, I'm going to have to keep that idea plugged in for a while before it...
Yeah, percolates through.
Yeah.
I've got one more thing to say to you metric people. I was thinking about this.
Fucking tenors.
The meter used to be based on the circumference of the Earth across the poles. So you would go from pole to pole, the polar circumference, right? It was the polar circumference of the Earth divided by some enormous number. I can't remember what it was. That used to give us the meter. Well, at some point in the more recent past, they decided to base the meter on the distance that light went in a certain amount of time. But of course, the speed of light changes. So that's going to be fun in the future for you metric people. Because the length of a meter is based on something that is not constant.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should all change to metric, and then we won't, like, 100 years from now, everything's gonna be fucking wrong. That'd be fun.
The John Anthony West episode is JRE 226.
Yeah,
Number 226.
and I've listened to that. And I don't remember what you're talking about, so I have to go back. And
It's
listen
like
to it
pretty
again.
near the end. That
was a great episode.
It was really
the one where he was
great.
laughing because he can hear the dog barking and
Yeah.
all that shit. He's like,
It's
"That's
so
great. I
great.
love it." And John Anthony West is there's a fan going in the background or something like
Yeah.
that.
And he goes, can we take a break? I need to go get some more vodka out of the fridge. That's right. He takes off to get vodka.
That's right.
And Joe Rogan's like, this guy's fucking awesome.
It's classic.
Well, that's it, folks.
Yeah, that's it.
Great show. Loved every minute of it.
Yep.
Hope you guys did.
And if you listen to that, or for any other reason, you can email us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. You can go to the blog and comment there.
Yeah, comment. Go listen to that episode and comment.
Yeah.
I want to know
Go
what
to
y'all think about that.
brothersoftheserpent.blogspot.com. Thanks to Kyle, thanks to Ty, thanks to AWACS Productions, Aetherium Studios.
Thanks to Laura
Thanks
for
to
the
Laura
intro.
for the intro again. New intro. Woo!
Intros are bad.
Right. You can go to iTunes to give us some props, some 5 stars.
Really, what you should do is just like jack your buddy's phone and just
Make him
like,
subscribe.
subscribe to our
Download
podcast.
download Beyond Pod and subscribe.
Oh man, I'm a total asshole. I meant to
Oh, yeah.
thank Trial by Error Variety Show podcast, which is one of our buddies here locally has a podcast, and it's all about bands. Each episode is a different band, local bands, all kinds of bands, and he interviews people, and he invited me over there for an interview about $50 Dynasty, my band.
Which episode was it? Do you know?
It hasn't been published yet. I think he's going to do it in April after Metal March.
Okay.
Yeah, so Metal.
Metal March.
But yeah, if y'all are interested, check it out.
What is it called again? Trial by Error.
Trial by Error Variety Show.
Nice. Cool.
So it was kind of funny. Like after the interview, he had me do a host of another show. So he has a band member come on and talk about their band.
Yeah.
And then after that's over, he's already got he's got multiple bookings ahead of time, and he's like publishing shows that he's already done in the past. And so like what he had me do was like a couple of lines he'd written about like introducing this other band and their interview. It's like, hey, I'm Kyle from $50 Dynasty and Snake Bros. So yeah, he asked me a lot about the Brothers of the Serpent podcast. He's listened to that, and so I was like trying to talk about music.
He listens to it.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know. What's up, bro?
Yeah, I was trying to talk about like the band and the music in terms of like some of the shit, that we've talked about here about ancient traditions and ancient wisdom and esoteric, and trying to like put that into the music and like make great art. For the future,
Yeah.
And it's like at one point he's like, he's not trying to say that he's Da Vinci. Okay, folks, I know this guy. He's not just like stuck up asshole. I was like, oh shit, no, I'm not. This would be really cool if I could do that, but not saying that I've done that at all.
And you won't know because you're gonna be dead.
That's right. I'm just doing my best so that maybe it's great. But
Yeah.
Anyway.
Otherwise, awesome fossil face.
yeah, so thanks to Chaz for that. That was fun. And anyway,
Yeah, that's really cool.
so
One more time with the name.
Trial by Error Variety Show.
Cool.
And at the end, it's like he has a specific way of saying it. Follow the golden rule. And he puts this echo thing on it, right?
Oh, nice.
So I had to do that as the host of one of the other shows.
Badass. All right, that's it for this week, and keep coming back. We got a lot of great subjects. I've been doing all kinds of research that I have not yet been able to get to in the shows because we keep going on tangents, which is great.
But we're gonna have Joe Rogan on our podcast.
And I'm gonna try to get Randall Carlson, and I've contacted some other people for some interviews that should be interesting if they contact me back. But yeah, so keep coming back, guys. We got a lot of interesting shit to talk about. So that's it for this week. Good
Thanks,
night.
Snakes.
That's right. Good night, Adamu.
I won.
Give me some gold.